Greetings and salutations. I'm the fallen angel Christopher Daniels.
Hello, yes, Danhausen here, to tell you, deliver a very nice, very evil message, if you will.
This is NXT superstar Dexter Loomis.
What's up, everybody? It's me, your buddy, your pal, Scott Stanford.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
This is the former intellectual savior of the masses, now known as Aaron Stevens, your NWA third-degree national champion.
This is Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, the role model, and you are listening to Greg Morgan with Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And I want to tell you, Greg, your buddy Howie, also known as Wheezy, as you call him, he told me all about your channel. I'm here to tell everybody that I've seen it, I've watched it, I've looked at it. I went down the rabbit hole and I couldn't get out of it. It was so good.
Yeah, you better watch this channel. You better watch all the videos.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
Watch them 5 times a piece. That's right, I said 5 times a piece. Do it. I know you've been a fan for like 40 years. I've only been doing it for 30, so I guess we're fans together there for 10 of it. Do it.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Do it!
Good Mic Work is the place to be for all your wrestling information, guaranteed.
The best wrestling content is right here at Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Check out Good Mic Work Commentaries on YouTube.
Subscribe, share, love, like, poke, whatever you need to do.
If you don't, we're gonna have a problem.
Love that, Danhausen, love that Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Do it now.
You're welcome.
Howdy, y'all. Good afternoon and happy Saturday once again. Welcome to your February 6th, 2021 edition of the Winged Eagle Podcast. Pretty loaded episode to get into this week. Very news heavy. Just got a lot of just tidbits and comings and goings and a couple of tributes and random news and notes, a lot more than we usually have on the podcast. So that's really going to load it up for us this week. Plus, we have plenty of results to get into, although we're not going to focus as heavily on those this week as we do in previous weeks because, you know, there was only a couple of really major things to take place this week in terms of NXT, AEW, and last night's SmackDown. So we'll get into all of that as well in addition to all the news that we're going to talk about today. And we have plenty of WrestleMania speculation. I've got some videos on the horizon I'm going to share with you and let you guys know about. And we'll be doing some chatting, question answering, things like that here in the YouTube chat. And should be a fun little Saturday podcast for you. I am sorry I have not been up here since Monday. I thought that I would be able to get up here for some sort of stream during the week or maybe a video, but really no time and no real reason to. Nothing really happened that would warrant a video, so I wasn't able to get up here. So it's been about a full week without me. I apologize, but you'll be getting me a lot here in the next couple days. We'll be back up Monday night immediately after Raw for another live review. Tomorrow, we got the Super Bowl here in the United States. So those of you living here, I'm curious who you think is going to win the Tom Brady Bowl, the team with Tom Brady or the team without Tom Brady. Let me know who you think in the chat there. I'll be live tweeting tomorrow during the Super Bowl as well. So if you want to follow me on Twitter at Good Mic Work, you can share your thoughts on the game with me. I was kind of mentally checked out of football season this year. COVID has really made me struggle to really even give a shit about sports at all. But it's still the Super Bowl, you know, even if it's only going to be a fraction of what Super Bowls usually are. It's still a big deal. Tom Brady could potentially make history, even though I hate his dumb fat face. He could definitely do that, and tomorrow might be interesting. So if you want to follow along with me, please do that. We should have a good time, and I am rooting for the chefs. That's for sure, Toxic Banana. But in terms of what's on the menu today, just to give you a quick rundown of stuff we're going to talk about, we are going to tribute Butch Reed, who passed away the other day at age 66. We're going to talk about WWE's Q4 and 2020 financial call that revealed some pretty heavy profits there. Again, as we heard in the last quarter as well, we're going to talk about Lars Sullivan, who was quietly released last month, and someone who was not so quietly released, Steve Cutler. A little bit of controversy attached there to both, so we'll get into that. We're going to talk about Cesaro, who re-signed with the WWE. Gabby Tuft now Gabby Tuft, formerly Tyler Rex in the WWE, has began her medical transition into female. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well, and some controversial topics or comments that Rex made this past summer. Talk a little bit about the Yokozuna documentary as well on the WWE Network that I touched on Monday night, but didn't get into that much detail on. We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny was making more news this week because he felt the wrath of the IWC to the point where it has maybe kind of changed my mind on his involvement in the company. So we will talk a little bit about Bad Bunny and everything that went on this week regarding him and his involvement in WWE in the future and a potential WrestleMania match. We have a big potential working agreement now between AEW and New Japan, maybe. We saw Kenta appear on Dynamite this past week, and we had an actual legitimate wedding, which was kind of wacky. We'll talk about that as well. Edge appeared across all three brands this week: Raw, NXT, and SmackDown. If Charlotte would have done that, the fans would have freaked out, but Edge is still on his victory tour, trying to decide who he's going to face at WrestleMania, and as of last night, still no official decision made. And other than that, we'll probably just touch on a few other things. We're going to talk about the Vengeance Day card coming up a week from tomorrow in NXT. 5 matches currently officially announced for that. That's probably going to be it, unless they throw an extra one on there, maybe a Cross and Escobar or something like that, but we pretty much got that figured out for Valentine's Day. And I'm going to share with you as well some of my memories on February 5th, 1988. Last night on SmackDown, they had Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart cutting a completely ridiculous, pointless promo mentioning a little bit about this show, and that it still has, the record audience of 33 million viewers because it was on prime time on NBC on a Sunday night, I believe. And I remember watching that live as a kid. I still have the original recording with local commercials and all. To this day, I still have that. And I think we are now at the 33rd anniversary of that event. So you've got some memories to share about that. We'll talk about that as well, probably near the end of the podcast there. But first thing I'm going to do is say hi to everybody in the chat, shout out the supporters on Patreon, and then we'll get cracking here in the news. And I think we're going to open up with a nice Butch Reed tribute. How Wheezy, good to see you in here as well. Got a monkey wrench right off the bat. And yes, rest in peace to Butch Reed. I have a lot of memories of Butch Reed growing up as a wrestling fan, and he was a guy that I thought was a legitimate, just badass, and kind of scared me shitless in a similar way to, maybe a David Schultz or something did, in terms of like kind of the fear he struck in me. I don't know why, but we'll talk a little bit about him and my memories and a little bit about his career, because that is a very sad passing that we had this week. And good to see everybody else like Nate and Muhammad and Chad and Nick and Toxic and Zane and K-Dogs, Kennel, Raven, Sonic Plays, JC, Chris, Daniel, WWE, Ryan, Ben, Justice, Colin, Melissa, happy birthday on Monday to you. We've got Chris as well, Young South Way Network, all y'all that are in here kind of hanging out. I appreciate you being here. And if you are here already, please smash that like button for me and get those thumbs up as high as we possibly can. Want to say hello and shout out all of the current supporters on Patreon that keep the ball rolling on this channel. Big shout out to Nikita Abalakin. I'm probably just destroying your last name. I apologize for that. Chris Miner, Super Fluffy Toaster, Deshaun Robinson, J Smooth 1999, Martin Can, Alex Dredge, Apron Bump Podcast, Alan Carter, Brandon Yelverton, Michael Tong, Nick Musser, Jimmy Anderson, K-Dogs Kennel, Ryan Y, Devlin Husband, John Redifer, Daniel Rodriguez, Claudio Clavadetscher, Reese Jones, Barry M. who's probably hanging around as well, Josiah Blevins, Mr. Steve, Scott Moss, Michael Kumo, Naveed, Keith Salyers, Nathan Walker, and Blake Moran. Appreciate all of your support on the Patreon page. If you would like to support the channel as well, you can do so right in the description below. Head on over to the Patreon page if you'd like. Otherwise, your eyeballs, your ears, and your likes is all I really ask out of you guys. So I appreciate you being here, and let's start rocking and rolling. Like I said, I want to get into some news first, and we're going to start with some sad news. I want to talk about the passing of Butch Reed, who did pass away yesterday at age 66 due to heart complications. Now, it was reported earlier on in the week. I saw this on Stampede's Wrestling's Twitter page that they were wishing the best to Butch Reed, who apparently had suffered a heart attack, one of two that he has suffered recently, very serious heart attacks, and eventually succumbed to those heart complications at age 66. Very sad death, because Butch Reed, he was a big star in the 80s, man. And I'll tell you, when it comes to like different territories and like going back and watching some of those, I think one of the territories that like holds up the best in terms of watching it 30 or 40 years later and the excitement and everything is Mid-South. And I don't know how much of Mid-South is available still on the network. I know at one time there was a bunch of Mid-South on there. I don't know so much about now, but I'm sure you can still find stuff like that on YouTube and everything. And I have some of that from my tape trading days. And I always remember, getting such a kick out of, watching guys like DiBiase and Duggan and Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Butch Reed and JYD and all of those stars that we would see in the WWE later on, just kicking ass and tearing it up in Mid-South. The action was always hot. The talent was off the hook. The crowd was always hot for every single show that they ever did. You watch any match from any time period in Mid-South, it seems like the crowd, more often than not, is coming out of their seats. And Butch Reed was a big part of that in Mid-South. He was actually known as Hacksaw Butch Reed and would actually feud with Jim Duggan over the Hacksaw name. And he was a huge babyface in Mid-South. And his feud with Duggan spanned so many different chapters, and where Butch Reed would turn heel, or I'm sorry, Butch Reed would turn heel, Duggan would turn face. They would be babyface together. They would even team together a couple of times, and had a lot of ups and downs throughout their feud. But Butch Reed was remarkably over back in those days, and he got brought up to WWE after his Mid-South run with Slick, who had been representing him for a short time. And they had changed his name from Hacksaw to The Natural. And he was in WWE only for a couple of years. But I remember at that time, Savage was the Intercontinental Champion and Ricky Steamboat had defeated Savage for the title. Now, I wasn't expecting Steamboat to drop the title as soon as he did, because he had that issue where he was going to, he wanted time off to watch the birth of his kid, and Vince wouldn't give it to him. So he left and had to drop the title and all that. But had that not happened, and he wouldn't have coughed that thing up so quick to Honky Tonk Man. I remember just as a kid watching Butch Reed thinking, I'm like, this is going to be the guy that's going to be Intercontinental Champion, because we have a babyface champion now. Somebody's going to beat him for it. And I thought Butch Reed was going to be Intercontinental Champion. I was 100% convinced in my little 12-year-old brain that Butch Reed would be the IC champion. Never panned out for him really in WWE. In terms of that, the title went over to Honky Tonk Man. There was some rumors at the time that at one point in time that Reed was supposed to win the title, but I don't think that was ever really confirmed. I think it was just, what they did there with Honky and putting the belt on him. But I remember he had a kind of a credibility and a legitimate tough feel to him that felt real as a young wrestling fan, plus everything that he did, in Mid-South with his stupidly good look and how over he was there. And coming into WWE, as a heel on that roster, to me, he was credible for some reason. I just really believed in him a lot and was a big fan of Butch Reed. He would only be in WWE, I think maybe 2 to 3 years, something like that. Would eventually then head over to WCW. He would form Doom with Ron Simmons. I remember Woman debuted them on a Halloween Havoc one year, probably 88, 89 maybe. And they were under masks for a while. And they would take the masks off. They would eventually split up and feud, and Simmons would get the better of that deal. And kind of Butch Reed was out of WCW by that point and pretty much working the indies for the rest of his career. But in terms of, a really prominent or visible black wrestler of the 80s, Butch Reed was one of the best and the biggest, probably along with JYD. And he was over everywhere he went. And I just always liked him. I just always have a lot of fond memories of Butch Reed. I remember when he was in WWF, it looked like they were going to start setting up a feud with him and Superstar Billy Graham. And that's when it was realized that Graham isn't going to be able to come back in the ring. He staged to come back. He wanted to come back to the ring, but he had really bad hips and everything, and he just wasn't able to go. He needed like another hip replacement surgery. So what they did is have Butch Reed and like one-man gang attack Billy Graham. They kind of laid him out in the ring and they held him down as the one-man gang kind of laid a bunch of splashes on Billy Graham's hip, kind of writing him off TV, essentially retiring him. I don't think he never gotten back in the ring after that. And that was also tied into Don Morocco coming out and helping Superstar Billy Graham and turning babyface, calling himself The Rock, and would be managed by Superstar Billy Graham. So I think that feud originally was supposed to be Reed and Graham that kind of morphed into Reed and The Rock at the time. So a lot of fond memories of Butch Reed. He was always on TV, it seemed like, when I was a kid. Just saw him every week. It felt like he was just very common thing to see on TV around that time. I remember he actually faced Randy Savage at WrestleMania 4 in the first round of the tournament. Savage beat him with the big elbow. I watched him wrestle, I think, twice. WrestleMania 3 against Coco Beware, and I attended a WCW show where him and Simmons were there as Doom. I think, in 1990 or some shit like that. So anyway, rest in peace to Butch Reed. Condolences out to his family and his friends and his loved ones. Age 66 is a bit young to die. But in terms of wrestling life, it seems about average, when it comes to a lot of these, retired old timers. So very sad, but just want to say a few words about Butch Reed because I always like Butch Reed. So rest in peace. WWE held their Q4 financial call along with their 2020 financials as well. If you want to read up on all the details here, you can. There was a lot of things said. Stephanie spoke. I think WWE's president, Nick Khan. There was no sign of Vince on this one, which apparently I don't think he's ever missed one of these. He always takes questions or whatever. But it's a very long thing to sit through, so if you want to do that, I'm sure you can find it without a problem or read up on the transcript of it. I only want to talk about a couple of major numbers or the couple of main numbers here, and that's it. That's all I really want to mention, but it's just, ridiculous numbers and ridiculous profits for this company. Now, the fourth quarter revenue was actually down 26%, but they set all-time records for yearly revenue at, take a deep breath here, $974.2 million. Jesus fucking Christ. Can somebody explain to me again why we fired Mike Chioda? That is just a nut hair below $1 billion in yearly revenue. Holy shit. Now, a lot of this is because, the TV deals. I mean, I think they lost a little bit of Saudi Arabia money this year, but the Peacock stuff and the NBC and then the Fox deals, and there's just a ridiculous amount of money that's coming in. They've thrived in the COVID era. It blows my mind. So even though they were down a bit in the fourth quarter for the year, all-time records in WWE. So there you go. Sometimes you wonder why that company does what they do. I mean, when you look at it like this, imagine if back in 1993 or 1994, when you had Duke the Dumpster Droese, or in 95 even, 94 and 95 might be more accurate there, where it was like that shitty time period, where it was Teal Hopper and Duke Droese, and you had like 5 good wrestlers on the roster, and that was it, and everything else was just hokey and silly. It sucked. WCW, had gotten Hogan over there and Savage by that point. Raw was only an hour long. Nothing was happening. The pay-per-views were flat. Imagine during that whole shitty time of 94 and 1995, if they would have been pulling in, $500 million in profits, and nearly $1 billion in total revenue, despite the lackluster product and all of that. I mean, that's kind of like, I know it's not the same because the talent roster, was a million times better than it was in 1994 and 1995. But in terms of, the interest and the booking and just how silly and cheesy and hokey and fucking dumb everything is every week, it would be like that. Just looking at the worst time period in WWE, like them bringing in $1 billion when Kevin Nash was champion or something. Sorry, Kevin, you're like my favorite dude in the world, but you know what I'm talking about here. Just that time period when, things weren't great in the company. Imagine if they were pulling in like record profits like this. So I don't know, but pretty amazing the type of money that this company is bringing in. And now this deal with the Peacock Network is potentially very beneficial to them because it is a lot more potential eyeballs. And I think that's what, they're trying to accomplish here. But they're going to have to up their game on their, production every week, and especially their booking, not necessarily production, booking is what I meant to say, if they really want to get any new potential eyeballs to look at what they have and then stay there. Because anybody can just look and say, okay, that's dumb, not watching that again. So, if they want to have this new big potential audience that they can attract, you better, it's WrestleMania time at least, so it's almost, only WWE is capable of fucking up WrestleMania time. They probably will, I'm sure, to some degree, but at least we're at WrestleMania time where we can count on hopefully a few more better Raws and SmackDowns than we normally get during other times of the year. So, if they want to attract a new audience, they at least have to try from a TV perspective. You can sign deals and get on a platform with as many eyeballs as possible. But, if those eyeballs aren't wrestling fans, it's going to be really hard to make a new one based on what they're giving us now. If Austin and Rock were out there every week, then, maybe. But nobody's tuning in to see Robert Roode and Ziggler against the Street Profits, shit like that. So, we'll see how that all goes, with Peacock, and if it does actually translate into new viewers or not. And I think that's Fastlane coming up on March 21st, a little bit over a month for the first pay-per-view on the Cock. Got some news on Lars Sullivan. Lars Sullivan was quietly released last month, according to PW Insider. That story was reported a few days ago, earlier on in the week. Now, Fightful Select reached out to Lars Sullivan and actually heard back. So I'm going to read you a report that I pulled off their Patreon page in regards to Lars Sullivan. Now, we know all of the problems that Lars Sullivan has had. He's been outed for, the racist and bigoted type of message board posts from a decade or so ago. He's tried his best to make amends for that, going around and apologizing to members of the roster, things of that nature. He's also had an injury that really set him back a lot. And then, we had the video, the pornographic video that came out of him as well, which probably would have been fine had it not contradicted so much to some of the stupid shit he said, a decade ago. And apparently he's got crippling anxiety issues and stuff, and he even went AWOL at some point in the company, or at one point a year or so ago, or whenever that was, and they couldn't find him and shit. So, you've got, his checkered past. You've got a pornographic video, you've got career-threatening injuries, and you've got anxiety. This does not seem like a talent that WWE is going to be able, I should say, to rely on. And we've been wondering the fate of Lars Sullivan for a while. A lot of people even picked him to win or at least be an entrant into the Royal Rumble, and he was nowhere to be found, but apparently they did release him. They never did announce this. As we're going to talk about here in a minute, they also released Steve Cutler the other day, and they did announce that on the website and on social media, but they never said anything about Lars Sullivan. So the report on Fightful Select, I'm going to read it to you here just so we can try to digest this together. But here's what they reported about the Lars Sullivan situation. They said they reached out to Lars Sullivan and actually heard back from him when the news dropped on Tuesday. He confirmed the release happened and was surprised WWE didn't announce it themselves. He chalked it up to them being nice and was very complimentary of how they handled his departure, saying they did it with compassion and honesty. Sullivan informed us that he told WWE he was done with wrestling after battling crippling anxiety issues to the point of struggling to eat during days of TV filming and was having trouble sleeping as well. He also lost his father last year, which compounded a roller coaster year for him. Sullivan called himself his own worst enemy and owned up to the multiple issues that prevented him from gaining traction in what he called his dream job. Sullivan told us that he's likely done with wrestling and again took responsibility for the issues that led to that, calling some actions idiocy and his own selfish behavior. We spoke with him about his WWE run, and he was grateful for the experience. One person in WWE told us they saw his shirtless promo with Michael Cole, I completely forgot about that, as sabotage, but if it was a test, he passed it. Sullivan himself said he liked doing the promo and saw it as them looking to add more depth to his character. He was given specific instruction to breathe heavy through the nose and the verbiage. At a point that was hammered home was that he was treated well by both WWE office and the locker room, and it wasn't a case of bullying. So he seemed to really handle that with grace. I mean, I know, a lot of us have our issues with what he said. I mean, he can't go back and change that now. I think I've said stupid shit before, never that fucking stupid, but some of the things he's said, in the past is going to be hard for some fans, I think, to let go, but I don't know what else he could do on his end to make good on that. I mean, he's apologized profusely. He's kissed everybody's ass. He feels terrible. He seems to have remorse. He holds himself accountable. He's not trying to justify it in any way. He's just saying, I did it. I'm stupid. Crucify me. I deserve it. That type of thing. And he's doing all of that while dealing with anxiety issues, with which I'm sure none of this is helping with it. So I know we've joked and we've had our issues with Lars Sullivan here in the past, but we really do wish him well. Because I know how serious, anxiety and mental mental issues can be, and we don't want that for anybody. So best of luck to Lars. It's a shame. He was such a big guy, and prior to all of the controversy on him coming out, remember how much we were into him? He was having some crazy matches with NXT. That one, I think it was the 4-way with like Gargano, maybe it was the 5-way or 6-way, whatever that big match was, where he picked up Johnny Gargano and like just chucked him into the audience and shit. Before all of the shit came out and the shit hit the fan with this guy, he was pretty impressive, and a lot of fans were like, oh shit, this might be somebody that could challenge a Brock or something if we can get him to the main roster. And oh my God, how badly it went downhill after that for him. So it's a sad situation when you have that much to offer in terms of size and presence and how much money WWE invested in this guy and shit like that, and how they built him there for a few years into this monster, and it just never worked out. So, he, at least he owns up to the mistakes he made, but in terms of his inability to control himself with the anxiety stuff and be able to focus and get out there and perform, his inability to do that sucks, because it could cost him probably a lot of money and a chance to be a star. So we feel bad for him in terms of that. But I guess he's probably done with wrestling now, and just wishing the best, I suppose. In a release that was not so quiet, WWE released Steve Cutler. I think they announced this, I believe, yesterday or the day before, no, a couple days ago, on the website and on social media. Now, there was a little bit of controversy attached to this one, too, because Cutler, who was a member of the Forgotten Sons and had recently been brought to TV to be one of Baron Corbin's Knights of the Lone Wolf, or whatever the fuck they were, and we hadn't really seen them. We saw them once or twice, and then they weren't on TV anymore. It's like, what happened to those guys? Well, apparently he contracted COVID potentially at a New Year's Eve party. He tested positive in the beginning of January, causing him and his lone wolf partner to miss some time. Somehow, apparently this really upset Vince, because Vince was under the assumption, they were under the assumption that he probably caught this at his New Year's Eve party, and then he showed up at TV and he was positive at TV, potentially putting others at risk. And this was enough to really upset Vince McMahon, and apparently they made the decision to release him over this. Now, this is the first release I've heard of, or I think we've heard of in either company, due to a COVID-related issue. I guess they're pissed at him for being irresponsible. Maybe this is a knee-jerk reaction by Vince, or maybe, it was just a bad day for Vince or whatever. But apparently this guy is well-liked. He's been there about 7 years. He's the boyfriend of Deonna Purrazzo, by the way, who's in Impact right now, I believe. And she even was a little bit outspoken about this on Twitter, kind of defending Cutler a little bit. And it's sad because he's well-liked. Apparently he was at the PC. He had offered to take some bumps for WWE's big man class that they're having. Apparently when they sent, all the big men to go down there to work on their ring shit, he's been one of the guys getting his ass kicked in the ring by those dudes. So apparently he was there doing a workout session when the call came in, and they had to kind of pull him out and say, look, dude, we're letting you go. And that probably fucking sucked. So that's a shame. Best of luck to him. But again, you got to be safe, and you don't want to take any chances. And if you're already a guy that is, not in upper top of the card, there's somebody who's like, might have a little bit of immunity, or, maybe untouchable or something. If you're expendable, you really got to mind your P's and Q's. And even though it sucks with these, restrictions and everything, you got to follow the protocols. And if you need to be isolated, you need to, quarantine or do whatever the company tells you to in order to keep your job, you kind of fucking have to do that. So that's a shame. I just feel terrible because he's probably not the only person that's broke a rule or two. I'm sure some of the talent, plenty of the talent, has gotten together and maybe had little get-togethers or parties or whatnot, but it kind of landed all on him. We wish him the best. That's a shame. One little note tidbit about that release is that Cutler did mention, he talked a little bit about the release and said that it was a shock to him, but he did mention that the WWE did leave the door open for him to return. So maybe he can turn up down the road when this shit blows over. But best of luck to Steve Cutler. He's gone, and I think Randy Orton's burns lasted longer than Baron Corbin's backup. So we'll have to see if he attempts to find, two more people, or change it up or what, or if that whole idea has just been scrapped altogether. But we'll talk about Corbin here later on when we talk about the Dominic match. Those are a couple of releases. Let's talk about the opposite of a release, a re-signing. Cesaro, whose contract was rumored to be expiring right after WrestleMania, apparently has agreed to a new deal, according to Dave Meltzer, and that would make a lot of sense because he has been featured pretty heavily on TV, so maybe WWE was trying to convince him to stick around. Apparently also, though, a couple of weeks back in that gauntlet match, when Shinsuke Nakamura had that great run and that great performance, that was supposed to be penciled in for Cesaro, but at the time he hadn't re-signed his deal yet, so they made the switch to have it Nakamura. So it looked like he was kind of in line for a push. He had a big clean submission victory win last night over Daniel Bryan. And let's just hope that they're just not blowing smoke, and they might actually do something with Cesaro. Of course, it's WrestleMania time, so in terms of him getting title matches and shit, that might not happen right away unless they put him in the ring with Roman Reigns between now and WrestleMania. They're going to need some sort of an opponent for him. He doesn't have a clear one right now unless they do one more with Kevin Owens, maybe to make up for the botched finish of the blow-off. I mean, I think the last man standing match was intended to be the blow-off, but technically, Kevin Owens should be the Universal Champion, and Rhea Ripley should have won the Royal Rumble because Roman Reigns was not standing up for way longer than 10 seconds, and they had to fucking, call an audible and modify it there, and, kind of looked like Bianca's feet might have touched the floor too. So Royal Rumble is kind of a mess. So maybe they will do one more. I don't think we need to see it necessarily. Kevin Owens, I'm hoping, will be moved into something meaningful for WrestleMania, not just something stupid. But maybe there's time to do one more match between the two, or maybe it's a temporary build for Cesaro to get in the ring with Roman Reigns sometime between now and Mania and actually have a title match. Lose, of course, but have a title match. But I'd almost prefer if they didn't do that and they gave Cesaro a slow push that lasted beyond WrestleMania, not just a quick one that resulted in a spear and a 1-2-3 by Roman Reigns. Maybe, put him in a different direction than that. So we'll see. But he's re-signed. I think that's great. We've all thought that for the past 7 or 8 years, Cesaro has been one of the most criminally underused people in all of wrestling. And there's always been talk of, Cesaro is probably unhappy there. He should go to AEW, and a lot of people were upset. I saw a lot of kind of backlash. Oh, what is he, stupid, re-signing with WWE? I'm like, bitch, it ain't your life. Who are you to tell this guy who he should sign with? Maybe he likes it there. He's got a lot of friends there. When you work for a place for that long, you create relationships and friendships, and the money's great. I mean, I know that Cesaro, we all feel like this guy should have been world champion back in 2014. WWE has been using him at a frustrating level ever since, but the dude is still a good wrestler. He's on TV every week. Yeah, he's not world champion, but he's always tag team champion. He's always doing something. He's not a guy that just hangs around in catering. He's on TV every week, so that's a start. What he's doing on TV every week is debatable, but now in recent weeks, it seems like he's gaining a little bit more momentum. If it was up to me, as soon as he body slammed the Big Show over the top rope at WrestleMania 30, aligned himself with Paul Heyman, he should have had a title shot at SummerSlam that year, but that didn't happen, of course. But now maybe it's a last gasp to actually do something with Cesaro and make use of all the money you're paying this guy, because he's one of the most capable people on the roster, and he's probably one of the most respected on the roster amongst his peers. And staying with WWE has its benefits as well, and one of them probably is the money and, just continuing his legacy there. And maybe that's where he sees himself finishing his career. Maybe he's not going to go to AEW ever, and maybe there is still a chance for him to win the title. But in terms of the decision, I almost laugh when people, what the fuck, what is he thinking? I'm like, there is so much more that goes into it than just what your beady little eyeballs see on TV. You don't know what other factors are factoring in here, how much money WWE is paying him, because he's probably treated very, very well behind the scenes. He's just not treated very well with the pen and paper in the creative room. That's all. So there probably were some benefits to him being there. Maybe he just didn't want to leave. So not supporting somebody's decision to resign is not what we do on this channel. And if anybody's doing that, tell them to fuck off. So anyway, congrats to Cesaro. I don't know what the details of the deal are, if it's a 3-year deal or if he even went as high as 5, not sure. But he's sticking around for, the immediate future and indefinitely as far as we can tell. So good for Cesaro. Hey, Ryan, I'm into that. Cesaro for Money in the Bank this year? Absolutely. Totally. He'd be a great pick for that. He'd be a great Money in the Bank holder, too. I would love to see that. Save that comment. I think he could be an odds-on favorite. We need somebody good to win the briefcase this year, man. Fucking Otis, and now the Miz is running around that damn thing. So Cesaro would just be a nice breath of fresh air for the men's briefcase this year. He's my number 1 pick. I want to talk a little bit too about the former WWE superstar known as Tyler Rex. Now, this is Gabby Tuft. She has began her medical transition into female. Former name Gabe Tuft was Tyler Rex's real name, now going to be known as Gabby Tuft. And this is kind of a big deal, I thought, because, you know, she came out, and it's always kind of a big deal and a very brave thing to do to make an announcement that's, you know, that massive. And I think it took a lot of people by surprise. And the reason I wanted to mention this is because normally this would be a great story and a great opportunity for us to show support on our channel for the LGBT community and all of that. And normally I would be here supporting her in every sense of the word, and in terms of her transition and this decision and her, you know, courage to come out and all of that. 100% got her back. Wish her the best. But it must not be forgotten that last June, Tyler Rex posted, or Gabe Tuft posted on her Twitter, social media, might have been Instagram. I saw this on Twitter. She's one of these anti-mask people. Really doesn't give a shit about the masks, very selfish about that, calls people sheep, purposely went into a store without a mask on, videotaped the whole thing, looking for a confrontation, encouraging others to not be a sheep. Don't wear your mask. They can't make you wear a mask. Whining and bitching about fucking imaginary freedoms. Sorry, it's just a pet peeve of mine. So even though we support the decision and all of that, I can't forget about that video that was posted last summer. Such an asshole thing to do. And Gabby is transgender. She's not trans douche. So if you've got that douchebag portion of your personality, that's not going anywhere. That probably is still very much alive and well within her personality. So I'm hoping that maybe she has changed her stance on the mask wearing and all of that bullshit, because I did not appreciate that video. It's such a shitty thing to do, to be so selfish like that and not care about the germs that you're potentially spreading. And, oh, maybe I don't want to wear a mask and they can't make you do it in America and blah, 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 and all that shit. God, it's just so infuriating to see people this self-absorbed, to see people this wrapped up in their own fucking head and their own goddamn imagination, to where the entire rest of the world doesn't matter, only they do. Fuck you. So, Gabby, we hope you're at peace. Gabby, we hope all this works out for you. Gabby, we hope everything goes as well as humanly possible for you, your journey, and your transition. But I really sincerely hope that your views on this pandemic and COVID and all of that has changed. Otherwise, I'm not going to give you a whole lot of press on this fucking podcast. So congrats, good luck, whatever. Hopefully you're not still a douchebag. So I thought I'd at least mention that, because that's just a shitty thing to do. Just a shitty thing to do. And that wasn't even that long ago. That was back in June. And we still see shit like that now. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that because I found it interesting. We also want to talk about the Yokozuna documentary. I talked a little bit about this on Monday. The new, I guess it's the Icon series on the WWE Network. The first episode was on Yokozuna. And this was a really good documentary because it was about an hour and 20 minutes long. And if the other ones are going to be as good as this one, I'm really looking forward to this series. And if you haven't seen it, please go check it out on the WWE Network, because it gives you a really good history of Yokozuna and his career. I remember everything about Yokozuna's run in the company. That was during a time period when my fandom was probably at its biggest. You know, I was fangirling out for everything back then, especially at that time, because that was in the Bret Hart era. That was during his run when Yoko came in. Yoko got there like a month after Bret won the title. And of course, Yoko beat Bret for it. Bret beat him for it. So I have a lot of memories of Yokozuna from that time period. And they ran through his career. He's been dead now for almost 21 years. He passed away in 2000. So it's been a long time, and a lot of young fans never saw him wrestle, you know, or maybe if they did, they're very, very, very young. So they really don't remember how awesome Yokozuna was. And they did a really good job here highlighting his career, you know, all the way from the beginning when they brought him in. And I'd seen plenty of dark matches with Yoko wrestling in, you know, kind of just a Samoan gear. And he wasn't, you know, being portrayed during the dark matches and during his tryouts and stuff as the sumo wrestler yet. And apparently he was supposed to have Rikishi's role in the Head Shrinkers. If I knew that, I had forgotten about it. And because, you know, I forgot what happened. Somebody was hurt or whatever, but I think Rikishi was hurt. or Yoko couldn't come in. I forgot what the fuck it was. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm all over the place here. But Yoko was supposed to be one of the head shrinkers. He was replaced then by Rikishi, but they had still planned to bring him in as a third one. And they showed some footage of a head shrinkers match where you can hear, I think, Gorilla mentioning, hey, there's a third one. You know, there's another one of these guys. Apparently he weighs over 400 pounds, close to 500 pounds, and he will be debuting soon. So they had still planned to use him as a, you know, I guess a third member of the head shrinkers for a while until they went in the other direction and decided to make him a sumo wrestler, which is really interesting. I kind of, if I'd known that, I forgot. It seemed like it was fresh information. I was surprised I didn't know it. So I just can't remember if I forgot or what, but, you know, that was kind of cool. It would have been interesting to see Yoko in that way. He actually, there was a pay-per-view, WWE pay-per-view. It's King of the Ring 94. I think it's King of the Ring 94. Pretty sure it was a 6-man. Yoko and the head shrinkers all teamed up to take on Luger. Luger and somebody. Luger and a couple people. Or maybe it was Yoko and the head shrinkers. Yeah. Luger, wasn't Crush. I can't remember. I think it's Yoko and the head shrinkers. Maybe it was Luger. Or maybe it was Crush and the head shrinkers. I can't remember. Pretty sure it was King of the Ring 1994. Correct me if I'm on that. I can't remember. They talked a lot about the WrestleMania 9 match with Bret Hart. We talked a little bit about that on Monday, and Hogan was one of the people interviewed for this. A lot of guys are on this. Hogan, Bruce Pritchard, Bret Hart, Rikishi, Undertaker. Lots of guys were interviewed for this. I think even Jim Ross might have been on here. Can't remember. But Hogan, you know, almost in a little bit of a way owned up to the politicking that he did at WrestleMania 9 in terms of convincing Vince McMahon to put the belt back on him. He even said I was going to leave again and go do movies, and I thought I could put somebody over or whatever. But he really just, you know, kind of gummed up the works there and fucked up what they were trying to do. And I would have much preferred, you know, Hogan, if he did win the belt the way he did, then have that SummerSlam torch passing moment with Bret Hart at SummerSlam 1993. That would have been great. Bret talks about that match all the time. It was supposed to happen. We took pictures, a tug of war with the belt and the whole deal. And then Hogan didn't want to work with Bret or whatever it was, and he wound up dropping the title to Yokozuna instead. But you have to wonder how all of that would have went if Hogan wouldn't have taken the belt, or if he did, if the match with Bret Hart did happen. Where would that have left Yokozuna? It might have stalled his run. So in a lot of ways, you know, Hogan coming in had helped Yoko a little bit because it allowed Yoko to beat him at King of the Ring 1993, and that was Hogan's last match in the WWE for like 9 years. Took him forever to get back there after that. So it was it actually probably benefited Yokozuna. But looking back, when you look at WrestleMania 9, back in those days, WrestleMania never ended on a bad note. WrestleMania never ended with a heel winning. WrestleMania never ended with the fans going home unhappy. So even though it felt like it was kind of an audible and it came out of nowhere that Hogan came in and beat Yokozuna for the title, I always assumed that it was because they wanted to send the crowd home happy. And the crowd popped, like it or not, even though, you know, the fans were kind of like, oh my God, Hogan, what the hell? That crowd in Las Vegas came out of their seats when Hulk Hogan beat Yokozuna for the title. So that was, I suppose, a good ending to WrestleMania. But Hogan just being back, having the title, holding it hostage until King of the Ring, not defending the title at all, and then just to pass it back to Yokozuna, they didn't even need to do that. But it did allow them to allow WrestleMania to end on a bad note, and we never got the Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart match. But that didn't harm Yokozuna at all. That was more harming Bret than anything. Yoko then held the title from King of the Ring all the way through until WrestleMania 10, where he dropped it to Bret in the main event with Piper as a referee and all of that. So they talked a lot about that situation, which was cool. Talked about Yokozuna's personality, who he was as a person, because the audience at home really never got to see that. Rikishi told a really nice story of Yoko's generosity, giving him a blank check so he could take care of some personal bills and in his new house and things like that. And of course, then as his WWE title run ran through, he went into the next year in 1995, gained even more weight, put him in the tag team with Owen Hart. They were tag team champions for a bit, and then they attempted to send him to Duke University to work on his weight. He didn't want to do it, agreed to do the program at home, but of course did not follow through with that either, and eventually weighed about 700 pounds before eventually leaving WWE for good. The last time I remember seeing Yoko was at Survivor Series 96. He was on a team and he looked enormous. I previously remember him from SummerSlam 96. He worked a kickoff match against Stone Cold Steve Austin, right after Austin won the King of the Ring. Man, back in the day, a couple years later, King of the Ring tournament winners would get title shots at SummerSlam. Here, Austin is working on the pre-show, working against Yoko, and that's when the top turnbuckle came off, and Yoko fell backwards, and Austin pinned him. And then I don't remember seeing him on TV much after that either until he came back again in Madison Square Garden at Survivor Series 2.5 years after dropping the belt to Brett in that very building in the main event, came back looking about 200 pounds heavier than that. And he was just enormous, absolutely enormous, way too big. And that was pretty much it for him in WWE. He made a couple of indie spots here and there sporadically as he got bigger and bigger. And then I guess in October of 2000, he finally passed away. So really sad, but also really, really well done documentary. I'm really surprised they never came out with a Yokozuna DVD like from back in the day. You know, all those DVDs they did? You know, Mr. Perfects and Brian Pillmans and Road Warriors and Stone Colds and Rocks and all those guys. You know, I can't believe we never got a Yoko DVD with all his best matches, 3-disc set. If we did, I never saw it come out. But, you know, also in a way, I'm glad they waited because this was a really well done documentary and they talked about a lot and maybe could have added a little bit more, you know, in terms of what they got into. But I was perfectly satisfied with it and really excited to see what the rest of these episodes are and who they're going to be on. And I haven't even seen the schedule for that or the lineup for that. Hey, that's not a bad idea. Nakamura versus Cesaro at WrestleMania. You put those two together in some kind of a match. I'm not sure if one of them could grab the IC belt prior to then or not, or unless Big E hangs on to it. I could see some sort of a triple threat too. Maybe Big E, Nakamura, and Cesaro. But Nakamura, Cesaro one-on-one would be fantastic. Would love to see that match at WrestleMania. I guess just as a grudge match. I suppose a grudge match. I don't know what else you could really put on the line with those two. You know what I'm saying? Also, I want to talk a little bit about Bad Bunny as well. Now, Bad Bunny came in at SummerSlam and was involved there. We saw Bad Bunny involved on Monday Night Raw as well, pulling up in a nice fancy car, having a Miz TV segment, and you know, getting a little bit of a rub from Damian Priest, or Damian Priest getting a rub from him, I should say. And there has been talk that he's been working out a little bit at the Performance Center and might actually be having a match at WrestleMania. So, of course, this sparked all sorts of crazy controversy in the IWC because everybody like myself is coming out and saying, oh, who the hell is Bad Bunny? And who the fuck is this guy? And like I did. Now, I never insulted the dude, but I am an older person. I don't listen to modern music. I can't relate to modern music. I don't give a shit about modern music. I don't know anything about it. I'm about as illiterate as you can be about modern music. And I fully admit that I don't know anything about pop culture. To me, that's not, to me, that's a quality. That's a positive aspect of my personality that I don't know anything about stupid, ridiculous shit in pop culture. And, you know, the top musical acts and stuff like that. It's all dumb. And it's just so dumb. It's so dumb to me. So I don't know any of this stuff. So Bad Bunny, when he comes in, I'm like, okay, here's another. This is not the first person to come into WWE as a guest or a celebrity guest that I haven't known who they are. This happens all the time. So to me, I didn't feel like this was anything new. But for some reason, this generated a lot of like outrage by the fans to where I'm seeing just everybody just shitting on this guy. Nobody's ever heard this guy. Nobody knows about his music or whatever. But when you look up this guy's social media numbers and his music popularity, he is extremely popular. He's got like 30 million followers. He sells millions of albums or millions of downloads. He's got more Twitter followers than the fucking president. So he's got plenty of notoriety. He is a big star. He's not a big star to someone like me, but he's a big star to what I'm sure is a massive part of WWE's audience. Plus, you know, he's going to help with the, you know, the Puerto Rican audience as well. And he's working with Damian Priest closely. And his songs are, you know, #1 on billboards and shit like that. So basically, this guy is extremely visible, extremely popular. Just because wrestling fans don't know who he is, or some wrestling fans like myself don't know who he is, doesn't mean he's completely invisible. So the outrage got so bad that I almost started kind of changing my tune on him. Like I never had a problem with him being there because we see plenty of celebrities come in, and I'm pretty much indifferent about all of them. I don't feel any differently about him than I have about any celebrity that's come in. So it really never bothered me any more than that. But then as the outrage started pouring in over this guy, I'm like, I feel like WWE's brought in far worse celebrities before. This is a company that brought in Snooki, all sorts of guests during the guest host era that were just there to promote shit, that didn't care or know the first thing about wrestling. Jeremy Piven getting excited for Summerfest, and all the other ridiculous people that they've brought in for absolutely no reason. This is a guy that seems to be involved. He seems to care. He seems to be a big wrestling fan. He seems to take it seriously, and he seems to really like what he's doing there, whereas some other people haven't given a shit. So the fact that this guy is invested, the fact that he wants to do well, and he's not just there for a payday or to promote an album or anything like that. He's working out at the PC, might get a match. Do I like celebrities being involved in the ring all the time? No. But if I'm going to have one involved, I at least want somebody that is a wrestling fan, that likes wrestling, or, is a lifelong fan like apparently Bad Bunny is. So now I'm no longer anti-Bad Bunny. I am now this guy's biggest fan. Just to piss off the IWC, I want this guy to win the Intercontinental fucking title, because I cannot believe how many people were coming out of the woodwork to attack this guy for no reason. And this is coming from an old fart like myself who doesn't know jack shit about modern music, because music connects with people in a special way. And a lot of that is driven by nostalgia. I think a lot of you guys can relate to this, especially people who are older. You hear a song and it automatically kind of transports you back to a specific time period in your life. That's what music does for me. That's why I prefer music that I grew up with. I think everybody's like that. When the young kids who are huge Bad Bunny fans now, 20 years from now, when the next dipshit artist comes around, they'll be like, man, in my day, music was good. That's what they're going to say. That's what we all say. We're used to that. So I can understand, from a musical sense, I'm never going to be able to connect or relate to any modern music at all, because I don't have it doesn't give me those feelings, and plus, from an artistic and point of view, it's not really my cup of tea, Bad Bunny's music. But that doesn't mean the music is shit. That just means it doesn't relate to me. And there's probably a lot of people, because you don't download 33 fucking million albums or whatever it is, or 33 million songs or whatever the hell his numbers are. They're ridiculous. They're astronomical. You don't download that much if you're just a completely worthless fucking musician. So he obviously has something to offer to some portion of the audience in the world, especially a younger audience and definitely a Puerto Rican audience. And for him to come into the WWE and doing that crossover probably benefits a lot of people, even WWE to a degree. And you have a guy that is not going through the motions. He's not walking through it. He's taking it seriously. He's invested. He's all in. He wants to do great. He's training. And he cares, and he likes wrestling. Wouldn't you rather have somebody there that likes wrestling and is a fan of wrestling than somebody that doesn't give a shit and is only there to help promote their self-interest or whatever? And which we've seen before. WWE used to do this a lot. We just did a pay-per-view review last month on Royal Rumble 1995. You go back and you watch that and watch how fucking disinterested Pamela Anderson is. Couldn't give a fuck what was going on around her. Did not care. Basically looked like she was being forced into doing it. And she wasn't being forced. She was just being paid really well. So she just went out there, smiled, didn't do anything, didn't appreciate where she was, didn't like wrestling, was creeped out by it most of the time, or literally ran away from Shawn Michaels in the ring when he's trying to do his pose with her. She wanted nothing to do with it. So you give me Bad Bunny over Pamela Anderson any day of the week. So I think that the outrage was a little bit over the top. I think that, yeah, guests coming in, musical stars, of today in modern music that I'm never going to hear about or care about coming in isn't my favorite thing in the world in WWE or anything. But like I said, if they're going to do it, at least put somebody in there that cares. And I think we can all agree that Bad Bunny, like him or not, cares. And I think it's pointless to shit on his music. I think it's pointless to shit on his music. I don't like his music. I'm never going to listen to his music. But lashing out and insulting him and insulting this guy, I don't think accomplishes anything. So there are times to be annoyed with WWE and fed up with some of their use of celebrities. This, to me, just isn't that time. Every WrestleMania has celebrities. Every WrestleMania has musical guests. Every single fucking one of them, it seems like. So if this is going to be the guy that's going to be the musical guest and perform a song at WrestleMania, so be it. Who sings Edge's song? On this day, whatever fucking band that is. If they're still around, have them do a performance. Let's play Edge to the Ring live at WrestleMania. You know, maybe do a couple of them. But having musical guests at WrestleMania is not that rare. Snooki has been involved in a WrestleMania match. If Snooki can, anybody can. And if they want to put Bad Bunny in the ring, you know, is Bad Bunny in the ring in a match with The Miz any less believable than Floyd Mayweather taking on Big Show? I mean, come on. So celebrities are a part of wrestling, especially at WrestleMania time. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, actually, these days, if WWE brings in a modern music superstar, I ain't going to know who they are. And I've made peace with that. I don't lash out and get mad. I'm just like, well, here's another dude that the entire world knows who they are except me. I'm the only one usually that's never heard of these guys. I don't listen to music. I don't know. I still don't know. I don't know who Nicki Minaj is. I hear her name. I see the name a lot, but I don't know a single fucking song. Now, if I heard a song and somebody's like, hey, good mic work, that's a Nicki Minaj song, I'm like, oh, I've heard that before. I've heard it on. I just didn't know it was her. You know, like I don't know. I don't Cardi B. I don't know these people. Don't know them. And they're huge fucking stars. 900 bajillion Twitter followers, and Greg dumbass Morgan has never heard of them. So I'm not the watermark. I'm not the measuring stick for this type of stuff. I don't think anybody should be. So if you're an old fart like me, just because you haven't heard of this person doesn't mean they're not a star. Just because you don't like the music doesn't mean the music sucks. Well, that's debatable. But you know what I mean? Myself, you, anybody else, we're not the center of the world. The world's a big place. And there's a lot of people out there besides just you. And that's the type of like kind of selfish, self-centered outrage that I saw over Bad Bunny. Oh, he sucks. And then it doesn't help when you have people like, I don't know why, Ryan Satin has never been anything but nice to me. I crack up at how much hatred this guy gets. Sorry, fucking he gets laid. Sorry that you don't. I don't know what else to tell you. But he gets so much flack, and he didn't do himself any favors by doing a video or something like that saying, oh, if you don't know who Bad Bunny is, all you're doing is outing yourself for not knowing anything about pop culture. And I'm like, yeah, guilty as charged. To me, that's not a bad thing. He's saying it as like it's a put down. Oh, you don't know anything about pop culture. Yeah, by design. I don't want to know anything about pop culture. I purposely go out of my way to not know anything about pop culture. I wear that like a badge of honor. I don't want to know about the new fresh sayings and the TikToks and all the shit that's going on. I can't do it. I'm too old. So I almost got a kick out of that. I'm like, well, Jesus, now, you know, Ryan coming out and saying that is only going to add more hatred to this Bad Bunny guy who's sitting there fucking not doing anything wrong, you know, but then other people are helping compound his heat. So by Ryan, even though I defend Ryan, him coming out and saying that put more heat on Bad Bunny. And it's like, fuck, you know, so, and try, we all see how the IWC reacts to things and acts about things. And their outrage towards Bad Bunny was so over the top that I have now done a complete 180, and I am 100% on board with Bad Bunny's involvement. I wish him the best. I hope he has a great run. I hope he has a WrestleMania match. I hope he wins the 24/7 title at least once. Why not? Doug Flutie won it today. So if Doug Flutie can win it, Bad Bunny can win it. And maybe he's enough. Maybe he's also there to maybe keep The Miz busy for a while, because The Miz has still got that briefcase and it's making me fucking nervous. So if they do some sort of a Bad Bunny match, you would assume that it would probably involve The Miz. He's always involved in these type of weird ass matches at WrestleMania, isn't he? You know, he did the Daniel Bryan match, he did the Cena Nikki Bella match. So if something's going to happen here with Bad Bunny and it actually turns out to be Bad Bunny versus The Miz, you know, maybe WWE is going to compromise with The Miz and they'll say, hey, look, you jobbed to Bad Bunny. We'll let you successfully cash in May or June or some shit. Well, I guess he's going to have to cash in prior to the next Money in the Bank if he is going to cash in. So if Bad Bunny is going to be involved in a match, it seems like it's probably going to be with The Miz or with Morrison or both, or maybe Miz and Morrison split up and Miz and Morrison face at WrestleMania and Bad Bunny is a referee or something, or maybe it's a triple threat match or a tag. I don't know. Bad Bunny and somebody else versus Miz and Morrison. Maybe Miz dumps Morrison and it's Morrison and Bad Bunny against Miz and somebody else. I don't know. But if that's what Bad Bunny does, just has a match involving The Miz at WrestleMania, who cares? It's a 2-night show. It's your bathroom break, you know? So basically, chill the fuck out. Ain't that big a deal. Bad Bunny's here. Life could be worse. Let's get over ourselves. I think that pretty much wrapped it up for the news and everything that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, we talked about Lars Sullivan. We talked about the quarter 4 call. We talked about Gabby Tuft's transition and her very offensive video from last summer, and the masks gave her a little bit of a hard time. Cesaro, we talked about him re-signing, the Steve Cutler and Lars Sullivan releases, Yoko documentary, and there is a little bit of news on New Japan as well, but we're going to talk about that as we get into Dynamite here. Now, in terms of the rest, the Wednesday night shows, they were both pretty good. Nothing great, but I'm not going to really break them down, super in detail here and match by match. We're just going to talk about a couple of things, including the big climax to Dynamite this week with Kenta showing up and attacking Jon Moxley. Pretty solid ratings victory for Dynamite this week as well. 844,000 to NXT's 610,000. The week before, randomly for no real reason, just seemed to be really close. Very, very close. Even though neither show was great or good, it just, they were close. So the ratings are a little funny with these two, but it was another solid win this week for AEW Dynamite, which was their beach break show. Just to kind of briefly run through some of the key points here. MJF and Jericho won the Tag Team Battle Royal, if I'm not mistaken. They now earn a tag team title shot at Revolution, I think, is the way that went. And, of course, that just added to more dissension with the Inner Circle. Even later on, Jericho and MJF are trying to celebrate, but Sammy is having no part of that. And he's like, look, we're just collateral damage. All that matters to you is that you and MJF win and blah, blah, blah. And MJF says, Sammy leaves, and along with Jericho, and then MJF kind of tells Wardlow to push the cameraman out of the room, shut the door so we can have a little conversation. And I think it's been at least 3 months now that I've been saying eventually they are going to boot Jericho out of the Inner Circle and MJF is going to take over. But I don't know how far away that is from happening. But the fact that MJF kind of called his own little Inner Circle meeting there and instructed the cameraman to get the F out might be a little tease there. We had Matt Hardy and Hangman Page successfully teaming up to defeat Luther and Serpentico here. And this was interesting because Big Money Matt is trying to sign Adam Page. Adam Page would agree to team up with him, but he's a little bit reluctant with everything else. He did raise his hand, but didn't really want to hug him or be around him. And Matt is really, really going out of his way to try to lure Hangman in. He even posted this very touching and heartwarming message to Hangman Page on Twitter, talking about how Hangman is the only one for him and he completes him. And even Rebby chimed in and was like, bitch, what the fuck? That was pretty funny. So Matt is trying to sign Hangman Page. Don't know where that's going to go, but the segments on TV are pretty entertaining between them. Pretty good women's match with Britt Baker defeating Thunder Rosa with all sorts of help from Rebel on the outside. The wedding was nuts. I guess we'll talk about the wedding next, because this was an actual real wedding. Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian. It was reported earlier on in the day that this was going to be legit. So James Mitchell, he just did the Impact wedding. He was going to be the officiant for this. And I've been an officiant. I married my sister and her husband. And it's very easy to do. I think you have to pay like an $80 fee, and then you get a certificate for a day or something like that. So James Mitchell is going to be performing the ceremony. Miro, of course, is the best man, and he's out there with his butler, Charles. And Kip is, dressed in his tux. Penelope looks absolutely stunning in her wedding dress. They go through their vows, and it's a lot of sexual innuendo, to have and to grope for as long as we both shall live. Talk about how hot each other is, and the Penelope's even about to mention the size of Kip's front area there before being cut off. And James Mitchell with a really cool line to have and to grope and kayfabing all others. Something like that. So all sorts of just little funny teases and references there. In the end, both say I do and both kiss, and they are officially married on television on AEW Dynamite, man and wife. So congrats to the happy couple. However, before they're able to actually be pronounced, the James Mitchell wants to do the, if anybody has any objection line, and that's when Miro steps in, which was pretty funny. Miro, by the way, is wearing the exact same outfit that he wore in his wedding to Lana, the one with Roman Reigns involved all those years ago when he still had the long hair, exact same outfit, which was pretty funny. And he interrupts. He's like, no, do not ask that question. I've been through these things before. Whatever you do, don't ask the objection question. I love that. That cracked me up. And then he kind of looks behind him. And the whole time during the wedding, there's this big box, this big giant present. And he goes, and by the way, what the fuck is this giant box? It's been driving me crazy all night. And Charles is like, oh, that present is for me. And, Miro's just convinced that somebody is in the present. So he attacks the box, beats the shit out of the box, but there's nothing in the box. And the only thing I didn't like about this is the entire time, not only was there a giant box in the ring, there was a giant cake in the ring. Now, another wedding that Miro was a part of in WWE, he came out of the big cake, right? So why is he so concerned with the box and not the cake? So the whole time I'm looking at the cake, I'm not even thinking about the fucking box. I think the box is just an extra prop in there. And then Miro all of a sudden is like, what's up with this box? And he just attacks the box and beats it up. And then we kind of get a little bit of a scuffle. Miro gets his bottom leg like handcuffed to the bottom rope, and Kip Sabian actually accidentally hits Miro in the face, which kind of pissed him off a little bit. Kip is brawling with Charles, in the ring, and that's when Orange Cassidy pops out of the top of the cake to reveal that he was the one in the cake. I don't think this was one of the best wrestling weddings we've ever seen. It was kind of interesting that it was an actual wedding, but quite predictable. The whole time, as soon as Miro said, what's in the box, I'm like, nothing, something's in the cake. And why don't you know that? Because you fucking jumped out of a cake once. So I found that a little bit ridiculous. It was a little bit silly. I don't think it was quite as silly as what happened on Impact, where somebody was actually shot and apparently killed in the Impact wedding. This one was just silly, weird. It was okay, but we've seen better. So I'm not going to grade this wedding very high in terms of wrestling weddings. We've seen better, and this one was a little bit all over the place. But hey, at the end of the day, congrats to the newlyweds, Penelope and Sabian. We wish you the best. Sabian, Penelope and Kip Sabian. We also had Lance Archer defeating Eddie Kingston in a lumberjack match. That one was nuts. Even Jake got involved a little bit physically during that, which was kind of hilarious. And the main event was real good. The main event is where we saw the big swerve at the end. We had the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega taking on Moxley, Rey Fenix, and Pac. And this was a great main event. This was one of my favorite matches of the week, and it was all over the place. As you can imagine, it would be. I love the Good Brothers and Omega kind of doing what Gallows, Anderson, and AJ were doing in WWE with the beat up John Cena. Now it's beat up John Moxley, targeting him. They do win the match. They beat Moxley, Phoenix, and Pac. And after the match, Kenta shows up out of nowhere and attacks John Moxley and I think he has a mask or whatever, and reveals himself. And that was just a big deal because holy shit, we've got a New Japan wrestler now in an AEW ring. This is something we've been waiting for a while, and we've been wondering. I thought this was already going to happen. I thought Kenta was going to show up on TV and attack Mox when he was still AEW champion. That would, then cause him to have a match for the U.S. title against Kenta and drop it or whatever. It took him a while to get this done. And apparently now that match is going to happen. And I guess I'm not sure exactly when it's going to happen. It could potentially happen on their US show because they did sign a deal with the Roku channel. So whenever that match happens, I'm guessing that maybe Omega will interfere and cost Moxley. And then we'll do Moxley Omega at Revolution. Maybe, I think, is what they're kind of going for here. But Kenta attacking Moxley to close out Dynamite was a huge deal because this now could open up the door for an actual working agreement between AEW and New Japan. Now, Dave Meltzer is reporting that nothing is for sure in terms of any working agreement going forward. As of right now, this has mainly to do with getting the United States title off of John Moxley. And New Japan has also signed a deal to start their weekly TV show debuting on the Roku channel on Thursdays. And this is going to be debuting pretty soon. I think in the next week or so. It's going to be every Thursday. I believe it's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern time, and it's going to be for the United States, Canada, and United Kingdom audience. We're going to be able to watch that on the Roku channel now. The show will also be available on demand after it airs, and I think some classic footage will also be available on demand there as well. So it's not really a TV deal. They are going to be on the Roku channel, and I have, let me see, I have 1, 2, 3, we have 5 Rokus in the house where I live. Actually, potentially maybe even 6, 5 for sure. And Rokus are everywhere. So that's good for them because that will open up the door for a decent audience there, hopefully. And this is going to be the first time on US TV, I think, since the Access TV deal ran out. So that's a big deal for them. Moxley and Kenta, the match is going to happen over here. I don't think Moxley's going to Japan to do that match. It's going to happen here. I think they should do a deal where Kenny Omega screws Moxley. You get the United States title off of him without having to strip him again and put it with Kenta. He can go back to New Japan. Everybody's happy. And who knows, down the line, once COVID is over and you start getting into later in the year and start talking about next year and next year's Wrestle Kingdom, maybe we can get Kenny Omega, over there to have a match against fucking Jay White or something. I don't know. But hopefully this will lead to a little bit more of a working agreement. I think New Japan tends to be stubborn on a couple of things from time to time, and this may well not go any further than Kenta and Moxley, but it would sure be cool if it did, because there's so much of a Bullet Club tie in there. Even after the show, AEW had released on their YouTube channel and their social media a little backstage interaction or outside parking garage interaction with Kenta and Kenny Omega, where he's like, "What's going on, brother?" He's like, "Switchblade didn't tell me you were going to be here." And Kenta basically said, "Fuck you," and walked away. So Omega, even when Kenta was in the ring, Omega was like looking at him with starry eyes, and Kenta wouldn't even make eye contact with Omega. So I kind of like that Kenny thinks that Kenta is like his Bullet Club brother, and Kenta wants nothing to do with him or anything. He just wants to beat Jon Moxley and get the United States title. So all that's really fun, and it plants the seeds for a lot, and it really opens up the door for so much incoming and outgoing talent now. You've already got the NWA agreement. You've got the Impact arrangement as well. We're seeing a lot of mixing in talent, and this is kind of a smart strategy, provided they can keep it together here and everybody can cooperate. To be able to work with so many different companies is something that WWE just, quite frankly, is never going to fucking do. They've never really done it. Even the ECW invasion in 1997 wasn't really, I suppose that was the closest thing, but even that didn't really last that long, only a couple of angles, and they really only utilized Jerry Lawler for that. Not many other people, or not anyone major on the roster, and certainly not the world champion. Brett wasn't going down to Philly, and working any title matches down there. So it was very different. And the fact that AEW isn't scared to do this, and they actually seem to want to, and to work with as many companies as possible just to introduce new matches, new talent, and things like that, I think is just great for the wrestling audience. We've always wanted something like this. So this is cool. This is a big deal. This is cross promotion, the likes of which we have really never seen in wrestling. Maybe a little bit with WCW, because I think they had an All Japan working agreement. We saw some crossover there. But this is involving, major talent, world champions and champions now from 4 different promotions, all taking place. A lot of this is taking place on Wednesday nights, so that's cool. I'm all on board with this. The more the merrier, if you ask me, and even more so than the NWA and the Impact agreement, even though I think that's cool and that helps. The New Japan working agreement is what I want, because the potential matchups there are just silly and stupid, and would be so awesome if something like that got worked out and these two promotions can actually start cooperating and working together on a regular basis. I'm excited. So we'll have to see. We'll stay tuned. But Dynamite was an okay show. Really, it was just the ending that I liked. I thought the main event match was incredible. The swerve at the end with Kenta was awesome. And the wedding was just kind of okay. All in all, mediocre Dynamite this week. Nothing too crazy coming out of that. NXT, the same thing. Like I said, they got their ass whipped pretty heavily in the ratings this week by AEW. But the show was still pretty solid because it had some really good matches on there. Now, first thing we want to do is offer in a congratulations to Wade Barrett, who after, I think, 12 or 13 years here in this country has obtained his U.S. citizenship. They gave him a little present on NXT, I think a picture of Hacksaw Jim Duggan, which was kind of cool. So congrats to Wade Barrett. Very happy for him. We had Edge appearing on NXT. That was heavily promoted earlier this week. Now Edge kind of wants to make the rounds, and I like this. I like that they were having Edge on NXT this week, just for him to go there, give a rub to some of this NXT talent. And plus, as the winner of the Royal Rumble, he does have the right to challenge Finn Balor if he wants. I'm not expecting him to. I think the match is with Roman, but I did like that they were at least going to tease this 1 week on NXT. And who knows, they might tease it another because Edge stayed pretty busy. He interacted with a lot of people on Wednesday. And last night, we still, as of last night's SmackDown, he still has not made it known who his opponent is going to be. I thought for sure last night Edge would make the decision, but he didn't. So they're going to at least stretch this out one more week, which means he might turn up next Wednesday on NXT. I don't know. But he was there doing a lot of stuff involving the world title. Now, Pete Dunne and Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch, I believe, are in the ring cutting a promo. Finn Balor comes out to confront them, and it's going to be Finn Balor and Pete Dunne at TakeOver for the NXT title. That's a match I'm really looking forward to. By the way, TakeOver is going to be called Vengeance Day. I wasn't aware of this until like 2 or 3 days ago. Vengeance Day on Valentine's Day. I don't know why it's not St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Maybe massacre isn't the correct terminology or word to be using right now. I would assume maybe that's why they decided to call it Vengeance Day. We've had a vengeance, but never a Vengeance Day. So NXT TakeOver Vengeance Day coming up 1 week from tomorrow on Valentine's Day, February 14th, and it will be Pete Dunne challenging Finn Balor for the title. That's going to be fucking great. I fully expect and hope, actually, too, that Finn Balor retains the title. I would love Pete Dunne to be NXT champion. No problem. But maybe just not right now. I think the direction is probably going to lead to a Balor and Karrion Kross WrestleMania match. Now, because there has been some rumblings that potentially the NXT title could be defended at WrestleMania. I think they should do that since it's a 2-night event. And if you do Finn Balor and Karrion Kross at WrestleMania, that would be really awesome. If not, the takeover that's attached to WrestleMania, whatever they plan to do there. I'm not sure. So I'm going to assume that Balor is going to survive Pete Dunne at Vengeance Day. Maybe we get a rematch after that, maybe on TV or something prior to WrestleMania. But I would assume by the time we get to WrestleMania, Balor should remain champion and he should face Karrion Kross. And if you're ever going to bring back the Demon, you bring back that Demon against Karrion Kross at WrestleMania. So that's kind of what I'm hoping this leads to. But in the meantime, you still got a whole lot of shit to do. So as they're out there talking to each other, that's when Edge makes his way to the ring. And he gets in the ring and cuts a promo, talks a lot about the young NXT talent, says he sees a lot of himself in Pete Dunne, and him winning the Royal Rumble allows him to choose any champion he wants. He's going to keep an eye on their match, and he's going to see how it goes, and maybe he'll decide after Vengeance, or maybe he'll decide before then, but he's going to be watching it and don't rule him out for challenging for the title. So that's kind of cool. I mean, Edge versus Finn Balor is not something that I would hate. Certainly on paper, I wouldn't hate that, but I don't know if it doesn't sound realistic to me. I think Edge and Roman is the story there, and I think they were basically just putting Edge, somebody with this Hall of Fame career, in NXT to give some rubs to some of these guys, and that's one thing that I appreciate a lot more from Edge and his run and his comeback story than I do about others, like a Goldberg or like a Rock or like an Undertaker. Because much like we see Chris Jericho in AEW constantly working against or teaming with a lot of young talent, Sammy Guevara, MJF, Orange Cassidy, pretty much everybody, all the young stars he's having random matches with. I think he had a one-on-one match on Dynamite 1 week against Isaiah Cassidy. He's given rubs to Sammy Guevara. He's, really helping to elevate MJF, and we'll probably wind up putting him over one day, working with Cody Rhodes and everybody. He's just, he's there to kind of give back as much as he can to the younger generation and work with as many of them as he possibly can. And with Edge kind of being back, it feels like he's doing the same thing, doesn't he? He's only been back for a week. Addison, won the Royal Rumble, but cut the promo on Raw, returned at the Royal Rumble. That was less than a week ago. And just within the span of this week, he gave a pretty nice rub to Damian Priest on Monday Night Raw, very reminiscent of The Undertaker, giving a little attaboy to John Cena back in 2002 when he made his debut. He did that to Damian Priest. Then you fast forward to Wednesday night, he's in the ring, giving rub to Balor and Damian Priest. He would go backstage. I think he even talked to Bronson Reed for a second. Loved the backstage promo with him and William Regal. William Regal's got the brass knucks. Edge has eaten them knucks a couple of times, even lost the title to Regal in that way, I believe, as well. So loved that segment behind the scenes as well. And then later on, in the parking lot, as Edge is leaving, he catches up with Karrion Kross. Karrion gets in his face, and says anything's possible or whatever, maybe teasing that we could get a Karrion Kross and Edge match somewhere down the line as well. So with him only being back in for 1 week, he's already kind of rubbed off some of his edginess on like a half a dozen or more talents. And that's a good thing. That's a good utilization of him. I don't want to see him on all 3 shows for the next 4 weeks or anything. I think he needs to wrap it up and make his damn decision by next Friday at the latest, maybe doing one more stop here on each show to continue his decision-making process. Maybe Monday night he comes out and talks to Drew McIntyre some more, just interviewing him, taking notes, trying to figure out who he's going to face. Maybe goes back to NXT on the go-home takeover show to do it again before going to Friday Night SmackDown next Friday and possibly making his decision. But I still think he's going to pick Roman. There's nothing that happened this week made me think differently. Yeah, they can make you think about Balor and Edge, but does that really make sense? I think Edge and Roman is probably just the better story. It's the bigger marquee match there. And that's probably what we're likely to see. But, in the meantime, if Edge can, give a little bit of rub to some younger guys or some current talent, I don't see any downside to that whatsoever. And I'm glad that they're doing it this way because we know how the wrestling fans can be. They tend to kind of turn on people, and I'm really worried that they're going to start doing that to Edge. I hope not, but it's not believe they're just going to start getting pissed. You know how they get. So I'm glad that at least with Edge being here, he's doing a lot with some of the current talent. And one thing you have to remember, if Edge does win a championship at some point, he's going to drop that championship. And I've been saying right from the start, prior to the Royal Rumble, in my predictions video, when I predicted Edge, I said, hey, he should go to WrestleMania and face Roman Reigns and lose. I'd be perfectly fine with him losing and not winning the title and not having that storybook ending, but giving back instead. Maybe still winning the title down the line, but maybe just not at WrestleMania. Maybe he's not going to be the one to dethrone the tribal chief. It might have to be somebody else. I'd prefer it, honestly, to be someone else like a Bobby Lashley or somebody, maybe a little bit stronger. And not 47 years old, with a repaired neck and making a comeback story and might be a little bit more frail than he was in recent years. I'd be perfectly happy with the more realistic outcome there, but either way, I support Edge and his comeback, and I'm just happy to see him there. So no complaints out of me concerning anything Edge is doing. And I think he got in a lot on NXT on Wednesday. He was there and, kind of interacted with a pretty good handful of talent there, and that's a great use of Edge. So I was happy to see that. We also had a ton of the Dusty Rhodes men's and women's matches going on as well. So these brackets are almost set now. We had a really good semifinal match between Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez and Casey Catanzaro and Caden Carter. That match was really good. Carter and Catanzaro were pretty impressive. A couple of upset victories there, getting them this far. But as much as I liked their little run they had, did not want to see them beat Dakota and Raquel. They didn't. Dakota and Raquel advanced. They are now in the finals, and they will face the winners, I believe, of the match that's going to happen, I think, this week between Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell and Shotzi Blackheart and Ember Moon. So it looks like they're probably setting up for a Shotzi, Ember, Dakota, Raquel final. And as much as I like Dakota and Raquel, I kind of think that Shotzi and Ember are going to win the tournament. I feel like that's going to be your team to win the Dusty Women's Classic, but we'll see. And I guess the finals of that will take place at Vengeance Day. We had the quarters for the men, 2 quarterfinal matches going on as well. Legado del Fantasma defeated the Lucha House Party, and Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa defeated the Undisputed Era in a phenomenal main event. Absolutely loved that one. That match and the Dynamite main event with Good Brothers Omega, Mox Phoenix, and Pac were pretty much equally as good. I really enjoyed both of them. It's really hard for me to pick a favorite there. Probably AEW, but just by a hair. That's only because of the appearance by Kenta. But this match here was a lot of fun. So this sets up the semifinals for this week, which will be Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa taking on the Grizzled Young Veterans. Legado del Fantasma taking on MSK. The winners of those 2 matches will face in the finals of the Dusty Classic at Vengeance Day. So based on who's left there, I'm pulling for Thatcher and Ciampa all the way. But I can also see MSK winning. I can also see Grizzleds winning. But if you put Ciampa and Thatcher together, I don't think they lose. They go all the way. Without them, I'm picking Grizzleds at this point, but I think they're going to be too good, too strong. Little face-off, too, at the end of the show with Thatch, Ciampa, and the veterans. So should be a fun, awesome match next week. But, like I said, I don't think you're going to pair these two, Thatcher and Ciampa, together for just 2 weeks and then call it a day. I think they should win the Dusty Classic and then go on to win the tag team titles. I do. That's what I'm hoping to see there. So all in all, a pretty good NXT show, but nothing crazy that happened. The only thing that was kind of confusing to me is the Santos Escobar and Karrion Kross issue. Santos Escobar defeated the hilarious Kurt Stallion in a pretty funny, quick match. Scarlett showed up during the match on the little perch. Karrion Kross comes out at the end, takes out Santos's backup, gets in the ring and cuts a promo with him. Santos not backing down. Actually looks like, if you're just tuning in as a casual fan, you're looking at two guys that both look equally scary in a way. Kross is a little bit bigger, but Santos is not backing down at all. And it looks like they're teasing for a match between those two. I guess that'll just happen on TV. Maybe this is, like I said, just some time-killing stuff for Karrion Kross to do. At some point, he is going to find his way back into number one contendership, I would assume, and probably take on Finn Balor for the title, hopefully at WrestleMania. That's kind of what I hope they do, especially with talk of the the NXT title being defended there, because technically if Edge were to challenge Finn Balor, then it would be defended there. So if Edge doesn't, maybe they can still defend it there as well and make that maybe a yearly tradition for WrestleMania. I don't know if they want to change that up, but the fans would be comfortable with that. But if we added just one night a year, WrestleMania is the one night that the NXT title is defended on the main roster. No other pay-per-view, no SummerSlams, nothing else, just that. But then again, if you did that, you'd have to do it with the women's title as well. And that means you'd be having 3 world title matches at a WrestleMania for the men and 3 for the women. That might be a bit much, especially if you have an IC title match, a US title match, and tag team title matches. Might just be too much going on. But this year's different. We still are dealing with the pandemic. WrestleMania is going to be different with a limited capacity, a 2-night show. So there is room this year to do it, I suppose. And I think that would be pretty fun. I don't know what they have planned for TakeOver. I'm assuming there might be one Friday. Would they do that after SmackDown? I don't know how it's going to work this year. No idea. But I would like to see that take place around WrestleMania time whenever it does. So in terms of Vengeance Day on the 14th, like I said, a week from tomorrow, here's what we have for the card so far. Finn Balor defending the NXT title against Pete Dunne. Johnny Gargano defending the United States title against Kushida. We've got Io Shirai defending the NXT women's title against Toni Storm and Mercedes Martinez in a triple threat. And we have the Dusty men's and women's finals in the Dusty Classic tournaments. So that's 5 matches. They could tack one more on. Well, I wouldn't hate to see Kross and Escobar on that. I'd be fine with that. And, maybe they add something else as well. But shape it up to be a pretty decent, at least from an in-ring perspective, a pretty damn decent looking pay-per-view coming up next week. So that should be good. Nothing else really that interesting taking place on NXT last week. Austin Theory defeated Leon Ruff. And we had the origin story of the Tian Sha. Is that her name? She's the one that's kind of controlling Xia Li and Boa. That whole situation is really weird and a really long story there. Very comic book or sorcery sounding or whatever the fuck that shit is. But it's interesting and has been done pretty well so far. So that is not a situation or a storyline that's been boring me at all. It's even somewhat intriguing, but I still haven't wrapped my head completely around it yet. So we'll see where that goes in the future. That's going to leave us with last night's SmackDown. But before I do that, I want to just scroll over here to the chat, make sure everything's going okay. I know I got a couple of super chats to answer coming in way back. All the way, I'm looking for Alex because I saw him pop in with a really generous one a ways back. There you are, my friend. Good to see you, Alex Dredge. Shout out to a great Patreon supporter there. Appreciate the very generous super chat drop. Hey, Greg, can't watch the full stream tonight as I've got a massive headache, but thought I'd pop my head in and send a super chat. Have a great stream. Well, dude, I hope your massive headache gets better. Headaches are the absolute worst, but hopefully you can catch this on demand later on when you're feeling better. Good to see you, and thanks for being here, dude. Deshaun Robinson in the house as well with the $2 chat. Bad Bunny merch on WWE is number 1. See, there you go. Number 1, Bad Bunny merch. For real? Who the hell's buying Bad Bunny merch? Somebody is. So the idea that nobody knows who they are is wrong. To say nobody knows who he is a self-absorbed statement. Even I know better than that. So yeah, Bad Bunny is absolutely a star. cannot be debated. Just because my dumbass doesn't know who he is doesn't mean he ain't a star. Spaz, good to see you back, man, as well. Appreciate the $10. Greeting, man with the good mic. Cheap plug reviews for episodes 3 and 4 of WandaVision. I still don't really know what WandaVision is, and I see everybody talking about it. All kinds of Spider-Man 3 rumors, and the reviews for SmackDown and NXT are live now on the channel. Hope everyone is well. Yes, please head over to Spaz Phoenix's YouTube channel. Hit him with a sub, because if you like that other type of chatter, you like to talk about other things other than wrestling, movies, and WandaVisions and things like that, check out Spaz. He knows what he's talking about, and go show him some love. Chris Ludecki in the house, appreciate the $5 drop from you as well. Edge making his decision kind of reminds me of The Undertaker in 2007, showing up briefly on Raw and ECW before choosing Batista. I had forgotten about that. I remember 2007. I did a review of that Royal Rumble just a couple years ago, by the way. That was the Cena-Umaga match, right? And Undertaker, I think it was Undertaker and Shawn were the last two in the ring. Undertaker wins. I know he went into WrestleMania to face Batista that year at Ford Field, but I don't even remember his appearance on Raw and in ECW. So on Raw, who would have been the champion at that time? Oh, Cena. So he showed up there to potentially challenge Cena. And I don't even remember what was going on in ECW. Y'all got to help me. Yeah, interesting. I guess Edge is kind of doing the same thing here. Yeah, he's going to all the shows, which will probably become a theme because Charlotte changed the game last year, challenging the NXT champion. That wasn't something that was really talked about. Maybe fans had mentioned it, but it wasn't done yet. So now that it's been done once, they're going to have to factor that in every single year. So I would bet that probably every year, at least the men's or the women's Rumble winner, one of them will be in NXT teasing it, from now on. I think it would be worth Bianca to tease it. Bianca's going to be challenging Sasha. I'm assuming it feels that way anyway. So she'll be challenging Sasha, which is probably the right match to do there. But you could make the argument that Bianca was never able to capture that championship that a lot of fans felt like she should have captured. So maybe she's using this opportunity of winning the Royal Rumble to go do the one thing she didn't do and the one regret in her life and the one thing she wished she could have accomplished. She's going to go out down there and do that. At least there will be a story tied in there, but I prefer Bianca on the main roster. I think a match between her and Sasha has potential to be more than what we think it could be, even from a babyface perspective, even just the two of them. I think a triple threat would be fun if you added Bayley, but and I'd be fine with that, actually. The match would probably be pretty good. But if it does turn out just to be Bianca and Sasha, I challenge you, WWE. I challenge you to have some fun with this, because both these women are stars, and they're capable, and they're good. Don't fuck it up. You can't fuck that up. It's just sitting there in your lap. So I think they can make it good if they really cared enough. So that's what I'm kind of hoping happens there. I think any other scenario doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for Bianca. I feel like it's got to be Sasha. It's got to be Sasha. Spaz, did I see another one from you? Yes, I do. Another $10. Appreciate that, Spaz. Thank you so much. Escobar versus Cross is an underrated, great idea. It is. The cruiserweight champ facing a heavyweight pushes back the idea that the cruiserweights exist in a bubble. It does. And that was the first thing I thought of when I'm seeing the two face to face, because I'm like, did I miss something? Because I've only been kind of half-assed checking out NXT the last couple of weeks. And I'm like, if they had some interactions on TV that I've missed, like this seems to be like a very intense confrontation between the two. And I was curious why it was even happening. I know that Cross is not in the title match right now because that's going to be done in Balor at the pay-per-view, so he's got to do something. But Escobar was an interesting choice. And why all that was happening, I think it was Escobar dropping his name in a promo the week before. It was kind of random. I was like, that was odd. And now it's turning into something. So I would love to see them add that to Vengeance Day. That would be a pretty cool match just to add there, just a attraction match, grudge match, whatever you want to call it, and to keep Karrion Kross rolling until he eventually and inevitably gets his title rematch against Finn Balor. Yeah, Ratnick, you're right. If you're going to have a night, if you're going to have 6 world title matches, WrestleMania would be the night to do it, especially if it's 2 nights. One night would really be pushing it there to have just 6 title matches, even for WrestleMania, even a 7-hour show or whatever it used to be when it was in one night. 2 nights, they might be able to pull it off. We'll see. Oh, Bobby Lashley was the ECW champion. That's right. The whole Vince Trump match and all that. That's right. Forgot all about that. Lashley. That was 14 years ago, and Lashley looks the exact same. Doesn't look a bit different than he did back at WrestleMania 23 that year, shaving Vince's head. Let's talk about SmackDown. I want to mention SmackDown a little bit from last night. Not that great of a show, a little bit lackluster in terms of, I don't want to say lackluster, bad choice of words. Just not, it was a show that in terms of pay-per-view build storyline, you could probably skip. But if you watched it, we saw some really good matches on this show last night and a couple of interesting tidbits as well. I want to talk about Hulk Hogan first, because Hulk Hogan was randomly on SmackDown last night with Jimmy Hart. He cut, a promo from his house or wherever the hell he was. And it was all, oh, let me tell you something, brothers, and blah, blah, blah. And he was basically being brought there to talk a little bit about the anniversary, which was last night. February 5th was the 33-year anniversary of the Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant main event match that took place on prime time on NBC back in 1988. And it was a heavily hyped show. It was the biggest audience wrestling has ever seen. 33 million homes tuned in to watch Hogan and Andre that night. I was one of those 33 million people, and it was a school night. And I remember not staying up, but I remember watching it and being pretty devastated when Hulk Hogan lost the belt. I was only 12 years old, and I was pretty bummed, and I couldn't believe that Andre actually won the title and the whole deal. And it was so crazy. And I taped it on TV, still have the entire original recording on TV. And that, of course, is when they did the twin magic, the double referee thing with Earl and Dave Hebner. Dave Hebner was in the ring, or was the referee during the match. And I think that was Earl's debut. That was when they brought the twin referees in, and Earl was the one that took the big bump, when Hogan grabbed both referees and like, what's going on here? And they're freaking out. And I think Dave then attacks Earl Hebner, beats him up, and Earl attacks Dave. The evil referee attacks the good referee. And that tips Hogan off. Oh, you must have been in the pocket of Ted DiBiase. Picks up Earl and just launches him. Go back and watch that bump that Earl took with Hogan press slamming him and throwing him over the top rope into the aisleway, into DiBiase and Virgil and Andre. And they caught him, but just barely caught him. He just hit the fucking ground. That was great. Andre is actually a former WWE champion. Andre has actually held that Winged Eagle title before. And he held it on NBC in front of 33 million people that night when Mean Gene Okerlund, got up on the ring apron to interview him after he won. And he goes, I surrender the title to Ted DiBiase. And he gave the title to DiBiase. DiBiase is wearing the gold. Hogan is freaking out. That ended Hulk Hogan's 4-year run. He was champ for 4 years. Won the title in January of 84. Dropped it in February of 88. 4 years. In Olympics. One term of a presidency. That's how long he held it, which is only half the amount of time that Bruno held it during one run, but still a really long time. So to drop it in front of an audience like that was a huge deal. That set up WrestleMania 4, stripping and vacating the title after Andre gave it away and having a tournament for it, which Randy Savage would win. And I remember watching that as a kid. It was only an hour long, and it was terribly timed because it was supposed to be 3 matches. You were supposed to get 3 title matches: Honky Tonk Man versus Randy Savage, Hogan versus Andre, and Strike Force versus the Hart Foundation. And in the earlier match, it was Hogan and Honky. This dates all the way back from the night that the Mega Powers were born, back in October of 87 on Saturday Night's Main Event, where they shook hands for the first time, and it was the Honky and Savage IC title match, and Bret Hart interfered, cost Savage the title and the whole deal. So this issue had been brewing for a while. They come here to the main event on prime time on national television, and I remember as a kid 1,000,000% believing that Savage was not walking out of that match without the Intercontinental title. I thought Savage would win the IC title and Hogan would retain over Andre the Giant, and that's not what happened. And Honky Tonk Man, a lot of story behind that match too. Apparently Honky might have kind of refused to do the honors that night or whatever, but the plan was already, I think, in motion for Savage to go to WrestleMania and win the world title. But that night he did not win the IC title. I remember being super bummed about that as well. And for a kid my age, this was a very, very disappointing night, because not only did Savage not beat that asshole Honky Tonk Man, but Hogan dropped the belt to Andre the Giant. So I was I was bummed out as a kid. Like, it sucked. And to make matters worse, we're supposed to have a tag team title match after that, but because everything else took so long, the IC title match and the world title match, that by the time we got to the tag title match, the pay-per-view went off the air during the match. I remember Hart Foundation, Strikeforce are wrestling in the ring, and Vince McMahon signs us off, and that was it. But it was a huge audience, and it's the biggest audience wrestling's ever had, and I have fond memories of that night. I remember it like it was yesterday. My parents watched it with me. I remember going to bed that night. I had all my wrestling figures, my action figures, and I remember looking at them being like, damn, Hogan's not the champion anymore. For the first time since I was like 8 years old, Hogan is not the champion. I was shocked, couldn't believe it. So in terms of what they did last night, it was dumb. Like, Hogan just, cut one of his Hulk Hogan promos. Why didn't they just do a little video package? Just a little sit-down interview with Hulk for like 3 minutes where he just talked like a normal person, not like, oh, brother, or whatever, but just talked about that night, what it meant, how historic it was, and how we've never seen an audience like that since. Hogan and Andre had the indoor attendance record for so long, and they also had the at-home attendance record. Like, they really did. Hogan and Andre was a big deal in the 80s. So Hogan was on SmackDown to kind of commemorate that, but the promo I didn't like at all. I just don't need to see Hogan at all anymore, but it did make me think about the anniversary of that big match against that big, nasty, no good, stinking giant who won the WWE title that night. That night was actually the debut of the Winged Eagle title. First night it had ever been seen on TV. And it was funny, too, because I think Hogan cut his pre-match promo in a pre-tape, probably like the last set of TVs or last set of Saturday night's main event tapings, but he still had the 86 belt. So he cuts his pre-match promo seemingly right at Gorilla, right, on the other side of the curtain before he comes out to face Andre, and he's got the 86 belt, and then he comes out to the ring and he's wearing the Winged Eagle title, and that was it. So Hogan had a short run with that too. He only wore it for a couple of minutes before taking it off and passing it to Andre. So we really had 3 different people that night having like a 2-minute run with the Winged Eagle title. That was its birth. Pretty crazy. So anyway, if you've never seen that match, I'm sure it's available on the network, probably under the Saturday night's main event tab or portion, even though I think it took place on a Sunday night, I think. And it was only an hour, and it came on a lot earlier. It was prime time. Pretty sure it came out at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. I think it was 8 p.m. I think it ran from 8 to 9 on NBC. Fucking crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. Anyway, in terms of what else we saw on SmackDown last night, we had Roman Reigns opening up the show, kind of calling out Edge, and Edge didn't come out. Edge wasn't there yet, and of course, Roman is getting all upset. Nobody makes the tribal chief wait. Good to see Jey Uso back, who was at Roman's side. Now, I had predicted earlier on in the week, I think in my Raw review on Monday, that I thought Edge would come out on SmackDown on Friday, and they would do a deal where Roman just annihilated him, just attacked him, beat the shit out of him, maybe writing Edge off of TV for like 2 weeks. Not a long time, but a couple of weeks just to give a little breather before he comes back and picks up the WrestleMania stuff. Because Roman Reigns is going to have another title match or two prior to WrestleMania. We have Elimination Chamber and Fastlane still to get to before we get to WrestleMania. So if you jump right into Edge and Roman Reigns right now, what do you do? So I thought maybe, Edge could say something or piss Roman off. He would attack Edge, beat the shit out of him. Edge would be off TV. Then he'd come back at the end of the month or after Elimination Chamber and say, I'm back. I'm challenging you. You're who I want, and all that. Then they're off and running. Then they got a good month or so, or over a month and a half to build that. And, they don't have too many weeks laying ahead of them or something, but that didn't happen. This would stretch out all the way until the end of the show, with Edge not being out here now, but then coming back out later with Roman Reigns. And that was like kind of the main event segment. So Roman is in the ring with Edge, and he's demanding, of course, and insisting, like he does with everybody that's in the ring with him, that Edge acknowledge him as the tribal chief, as the main event, as your main event. And Edge doesn't do it. He doesn't even get a chance to really answer the threats of of Roman Reigns, because Kevin Owens hits the ring, attacks Roman Reigns, hits him with a Stone Cold Stunner, and Edge kind of like shrugs his shoulders like, well, guess I didn't have to say anything, and that was it. Show went off the air kind of abruptly without Edge giving his official decision. So it looks like they're going to stretch this out a little bit, which is fine. I don't think they need to stretch out the Bianca stuff so far, but Edge, if they're going to stretch it out 1 week, I guess that's all right. But I think by next Friday, something should happen. And I think my idea of Edge being attacked and Roman hurting him or fucking him up or something like that is still kind of likely to happen, and could maybe happen next week on SmackDown. And then with Elimination Chamber coming up, I believe on the 21st, I think the 21st is the date for both. I think Chamber's the 21st in February, and Fastlane's 21st in March, I believe, because the dates match up because we only have 28 days this month. So we got a couple of weeks until that happens. So what does Roman do at Elimination Chamber? Maybe he doesn't have a title defense at all. I'd be fine with that. That would be okay too. But I think he might have to do something on the show, if not that Fastlane. So feels like he's got to do something before then. So I think there's going to have to at some point be some sort of a break. Like I said, maybe not a long one, but some sort of a pause between Roman and Edge whenever that gets underway. So next week we'll see what Edge does. He'll probably be on Raw. And who knows, he might turn up a second week in a row on NXT as well. But if that's the case and he does both of those shows again, I absolutely think that should be it. And by the time he gets to next Friday's SmackDown, he either, number one, makes his decision, or the decision is made for him in terms of, maybe Roman Reigns whooping his ass. That's kind of what I hope we see there. But we did get no answer last night on SmackDown, and I guess that was slightly disappointing, but it also gave us a little bit of a glimpse and a tease to what future promos will be like between Edge and Roman Reigns, and I think those are going to be really, really interesting, especially when you start getting Paul Heyman involved on the mic. You could even bring Christian in. I would love to see Christian and Edge maybe win the tag team titles. That might be kind of fun, especially if Edge winds up challenging Roman, essentially landing him on the SmackDown brand. Maybe Christian can come in 1 week prior to now in WrestleMania, and Edge and Christian can beat Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler for the SmackDown tag team titles. I got no problem with that. The Outlaws did it. Why can't Edge and Christian do it? Or why can't Edge and Christian do it? The Outlaws did it. Hardy Boys did it. Let's have Edge and Christian do it too. I think that would be a lot of fun, and wouldn't be surprised to see that. And maybe when they drop the belts back, maybe it'd be like a quick run where they win them and lose them all before WrestleMania. And maybe Roman is involved in them losing the titles. I still think at some point in the Roman and Edge build to WrestleMania, Roman will kill Christian, to add more heat and stuff. I think something like that's going to happen as well. Wouldn't be surprised. So at the end of the day, I just hope that we are, in fact, getting the Edge versus Roman Reigns match at WrestleMania, and all signs are pointing to that actually happening, just nothing official yet. In terms of the in-ring matches we got this week on SmackDown, very good. Dominic and Baron Corbin wrestled for the 16th week in a row, but this match was pretty good. Rey Mysterio was underneath the ring, held Baron Corbin's leg, and allowing Dominic to beat him in the ring. Dominic was unaware of his father helping out. There's been that little struggle behind the scenes where Dominic doesn't want his help, and, Rey's conflicted and shit like that. Feels like they're planting the seeds for a Dominic and Rey Mysterio match at WrestleMania. At least I think, unless I'm completely misreading this. It feels like they're doing an awful lot here, and it feels like it's going to set up maybe Dominic turning on his dad or demanding a match against his dad, and then Rey will have to do the "no, I don't want to fight you" thing, and then Dominic will make him, and you eventually get that match. Rey Mysterio apparently, I guess, is re-signed another extension with WWE as well, so he is not yet done. He still wrestles at a high level, despite his age and everything, and that's great. We all love Rey. If he ain't on your most influential wrestler Mount Rushmore, then I don't know what the hell you're doing here, because he's incredible. Rey's the best. So looks like he might be fighting his own damn son at WrestleMania this year. We'll have to wait and see. Like I said, hell of a match between Cesaro and Daniel Bryan on SmackDown. Cesaro got his head busted open pretty good there in the back, wound up tapping out Daniel Bryan with the sharpshooter, a move that I'm kind of a fan of, and that was all great. A little fist bump at the end, show of respect as Daniel Bryan is, laying on the, or sitting on the mat, kind of recovering. Cesaro walks up to him, extends his fist. Bryan gives him one back, and there you go. We'll see where this leads for Cesaro, if he's headed towards some gold somewhere sometime in the future. Either way, it's nice to see Cesaro on TV having good matches and winning these matches. That's a start, right? At least that's a start. Speaking of good matches, Bayley and Ruby Riott kicked ass. Love this match. Billy Kay on commentary doesn't seem to understand that the Riot Squad want nothing to do with her. She doesn't really get that. I think Corey Graves even suggests that maybe she tries to partner up with Bayley instead, and she kind of was like, that's a good idea. She tries to help out Ruby Riot. Ruby, I think, is in a submission, and Billy gets up on the ring apron. I don't know what she's doing. I think she's trying to push the ring rope or the bottom rope into Ruby so she can reach it to break the submission hold, but it fucks up or something. Liv Morgan pulls her off, and they start arguing. The entire distraction allows Bayley to hit whatever that second finisher of, not the Bayley to belly, but the other thing she does. She nails that on Ruby Riot for the pin and wins the match in a really solid women's match. Ruby Riot is very good. And after the match, as Bayley is leaving, Billy Kay kind of approaches her. So maybe Billy's going to try to become Bayley's lackey. That might be fun because Bayley's got the Ding Dong Hello show now, and Billy is Billy, and Billy's super fucking annoying, and she's got her resumes and her paperwork and all that shit. If Bayley were to bring her on as some sort of like assistant, that could be a lot of fun, with her, kind of ordering her around, and treating her like shit, maybe eventually down the line leading to Billy Kay snapping and no longer being taken advantage of, and maybe even going babyface or something like that. I don't know, but I think Billy being like Bayley's assistant or something could be potentially fun and some pretty entertaining TV. So I hope they at least try that, because that might be fun. Bayley needs a sidekick. She needs something, especially if she maybe is not going to be involved in a title match at WrestleMania. I still think she could be. I still think you could do Bayley, Sasha, Bianca, but I still also think there's an attraction there with Bayley and Sasha one-on-one as well. Either way, I'd probably be happy with whatever they choose there. Speaking of them, Bianca and Sasha Banks and Carmella were all involved in a segment, and Bianca Belair has not officially decided who she's going to face. A lot of fun stuff in that match too, with Reginald, with Bianca beating Reginald with her hair. We haven't seen her really do that on the main roster. She did it a little bit in NXT, and Reginald is fucking hilarious. I absolutely love him. So at first I was a little bit confused why Carmella is still around and why she's still being involved here after losing to Sasha Banks, but her and especially Reginald add a lot. And this, again, much like, Edge not making his decision either, I guess they're kind of just killing time here, and we might eventually get some sort of a match then between Bianca Belair and Carmella. I still think maybe not Edge, but I think Bianca might at some point be goated into putting her WrestleMania title shot on the line, just as, a big match to have, maybe at Fastlane with something on the line or whatever. So they could still potentially do that. But in the end, I think right now, Sasha Banks is probably who she should challenge. And I can't really see a better option for her. So they'll keep stalling a little bit there too. And hopefully maybe by next week on SmackDown, we get both answers. That would be nice. They should hype that up. They should do that. They should make up some shit. Edge and Bianca Belair to both announce their opponents on SmackDown. Well, maybe that would be giving it away if they announced it there. You wouldn't come to SmackDown to announce you're facing Drew McIntyre. So I don't know, but maybe it would be fun if they could both do it in the same show. It would sure make for a good show, I would assume, whatever week that happens on. Tag team champions Ziggler and Rude defeated Otis and Chad Gable. Much like the Iconics, they split up Otis just to put him with another tag team partner. Makes a lot of sense, although I do like Gable a lot more than Tucker. And in a great main event in-ring match, the Roman and Edge segment was the main event segment, but the final match on the show was a great one. Triple threat Intercontinental title match. Big E defeating Sami Zayn and Apollo Crews. Pinned Apollo Crews there to retain the title. Looks like Apollo is heading for a heel turn. Every time he's in the ring, it seems like he makes the most of his opportunity. He is so good, and I think WWE's finally starting, after all this time, to take notice of that. I think when Apollo first turned up on the main roster, I was thinking of him along the lines of like a Dana Brooke or something. I'm like, that seemed kind of fast. Like, he didn't seem like he was in NXT for that long. Thought he could have done more there, and he was just kind of thrown up on the roster out of nowhere. And it took him a while to kind of get people to care, even though he has a good look. He's really, really athletic. Apparently his attitude is just top notch, and he works hard, and he's out there killing himself every time he's on TV and making the most of his opportunities. So even though he lost here, I think this is a stepping stone in his career and maybe a launching point for him to change up his personality and his gimmick a little bit. And dating all the way back to last year, he was doing the segments on Raw with like, what's his name? Why can't I think of his name? Charlotte's boyfriend. Andrade. Thank you, Greg. Jesus. Andrade, and there was that one backstage segment on Raw where he just slapped the shit out of Andrade and got right in his face. Like, back the fuck off me, man, or whatever he did. It was enough to convince me when I looked into his eyes. I'm like, ooh, he can be a badass when he wants to be. So turning him heel here, I'm ready for that. I think Apollo, even though he doesn't come off like a babyface on the surface, I think he can be, he doesn't come off as a heel on the surface, comes off as more of a babyface. I think he can be a good heel. So hoping for big things for Apollo, and maybe that was the beginning of it. Either way, Big E retaining the Intercontinental title is all I care about. I want that guy to stay champion, at least going into WrestleMania. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any really good, solid, concrete opponent on the horizon for WrestleMania unless they do that Christian match that was owed to Christian from way back in the day or something. That might actually be a fun attraction Intercontinental title match. Actually do that at WrestleMania. Otherwise, it feels like Big E is headed for a multi-man affair. Feels like it's going to be a ladder match or a four-way or something like that for the Intercontinental title, because I don't think Big E and Sami Zayn by themselves have enough mileage to get to WrestleMania. I think you got to take a lot of twists and turns along the way. So we'll see, but sooner or later we'll be able to start piecing together the WrestleMania card, because we're starting to get a few ideas now. And even though, like we said, Edge and Bianca haven't officially announced it, it feels like it's going to be Sasha and Roman as their choices. So anyway, I was able to somehow read through all of my notes in time before I had to get out of here. So it's been about a 2-hour podcast so far. Not a very big audience today, but we still covered a lot. For those of you who are here, please smash the thumbs up and the like button for me if you don't mind. Let me cruise back over here to the chat and see if I missed anybody. I missed OK Fabe. What's going on there, Connor? Good to see you, man. Just want to send you done my support, my friend. Keep up the great work. Thank you, OK Fabe. Please go check out his channel. He's a good guy, one of the best people in the YouTube community. Yeah, I know. I wasn't sure. He said damn spell check. I was like, yeah, what are you trying to write there, OK Fabe? Who's typing for you? But good to see you in here, buddy. Thanks for stopping by, and hope you're doing well. Yeah, Big E has plenty of time for an opponent to be built up. I just don't know who at this point. Could be Cesaro. Definitely could be Cesaro. We could see Daniel Bryan getting involved here, but they might still be having world title aspirations if, in fact, Edge does not challenge Roman. And we're pretty sure he will, but let's just say for argument's sake he doesn't. Then who is Roman facing at WrestleMania? Possibly Daniel Bryan or Cesaro. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Big E, I would love for that Christian match to come to fruition. That would be good. I wouldn't mind Big E and Sami Zayn, but like I said, that's an awful lot of build for those two to be fucking with each other every week until WrestleMania, when they've already been interacting virtually every week for the past few weeks already. So I don't know. I don't know what they do with Big E at this point at WrestleMania. Not sure. Hope he at least stays champion until then, though. Don't want to see him drop the IC for any reason. I suppose they could potentially do some sort of a New Day reunion if they wanted, and maybe get involved there. But again, I don't know what that would be. So y'all's guess is as good as mine with that stuff. Oh, AJ Styles. Yeah, you're right. It's quality, not quantity. That's what this channel is always about. AJ Styles, I would laugh and say, oh, AJ Styles can't wrestle Big E. He's on Raw. Isn't he on Raw? Yeah, he's on Raw. But that doesn't matter because brand split means dick. Oh, power went out. That sucks. Sorry to hear that. Damn, Too Cold Scorpio, good mic work, and Solid Monster versus the Cultaholics in a tag team. 1 million subscribers on a pole match, brother. All million of them are going to be on one pole? That's going to be crowded. And then what if I retrieve them first? How do I use them as a weapon? I can try. Just reading through some of these chat questions here, see if there's anything good. We got some Mount Rushmore of wrestling. You know, Mount Rushmore of wrestling is way too hard to do. I think what we need to do is like do Mount Rushmores in categories. Like I mentioned earlier, like influential wrestlers, like Rey Mysterio did an awful lot to change the business with somebody his size, you know, becoming the star that he did, and, you know, being a big reason, one of the big reasons why, you know, the big man era, I mean, there's a lot of factors to that, why the big man era isn't the only the only era in wrestling anymore. Now we got people like Marco Stunt getting contracts, and Rey Mysterio has a lot to do with that. He changed the game. I never thought, even when he came into WWE and was a star, just still, even up until WrestleMania 22, I never envisioned Rey as a world champion because he was just too small. So he changed everything. And that started way back in WCW. I remember with the pay-per-view match with him and Kevin Nash. I'm like, it's just so weird. It's not a match that you'd see really in WWE. So just different. Seth Rollins is coming back. I guess there was a promo on SmackDown hyping that up. I think he'll be back next week, correct? So Seth on his way back could have some implications as well in terms of who Big E will face. Seth and Big E would be all right. I'd be into that. Problem is, though, Jason Havlick, you're mentioning Seth Rollins versus Big E with Rollins doing the job. I feel like Rollins is due for a victory this year at WrestleMania, so maybe Big E isn't the opponent for him. He jobbed Kevin Owens last year. He had a big WrestleMania 35, I know, of course, defeating Brock Lesnar, but, he kind of jobbed last year. He had a weird kind of finish to the year as he was leaving to go welcome the birth of his first child, and now that he's back, I think whatever Seth does might be a victory at WrestleMania. I'm not sure. I don't know. Are they going to have a Battle Royal this year, an Andre the Giant Battle Royal? If they do, somebody's got to win that. A lot of pieces, a lot of outstanding pieces. We have Braun Strowman also on the SmackDown roster with nothing to do as of yet. He's somebody that could take on Big E for the Intercontinental title. He is a former Intercontinental champion. I believe even, didn't the title change when it was on him? Who had the title when it switched over from the old design to the new ugly-ass design? It might have been Sammy, but I thought it was Strowman. Oh, thank you for that, Ryan. APA Untold on the network tomorrow. That's cool. I thought there was an APA thing coming out, and there's something on the network now, but it's just a compilation. It's like a best of. I thought I saw some sort of preview for an APA documentary. That will be good. I will definitely watch that. Hey, Rollins versus Riddle. That's a possibility as well. Again, Riddle's on Raw, but that means nothing. They did have the run-in at the Royal Rumble. They did square up and brawl a little bit in the ring, so that's possible. Wow. Yeah. Exactly 10 years since The Rock returned. Is this when he returned after the Rumble in 2011? I remember that, man. 10 years. My God. Cut the promo on John Cena. Crazy. What a weird year. Oh, Sasha is the next guest on Broken Skull Sessions. That's cool. Wasn't aware of that either. Did you guys see the tweet that Randy Orton sent out about a week or so ago? Called out Austin. He goes, how come I haven't been on your show, man? And then I was thinking about it. I'm like, once I read that, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Yeah. Why hasn't he been on the show? Randy Orton would be a great guest on Broken Skull Sessions. Maybe they don't want, to put him in that personal light when he's kind of like the dirty heel that he is on TV right now or something like that, and they don't want him to be relatable type of thing. But when it gets to the right time, he absolutely should be a guy on there. I would love to hear Orton on that, talking to Austin. He's got some stories to tell, for sure. Loaded career. So much to talk about. Big E versus Christian versus Apollo, triple threat. That could work, I suppose. Christian getting involved would be fun. Christian versus Big E at Fastlane due to Peacock. Yeah, maybe. And I still think also that Christian will be involved at the Edge stuff somehow. I think Roman Reigns sometime during the build to WrestleMania should beat the hell out of Christian. Just like, people always beat up Owen Hart when they were feuding with Brett and stuff. Same deal. You always beat up the friend. You always beat up the brother. Always. Yeah, maybe Austin doesn't want Randy Orton on his show because he's worried he'll be getting an RKO. Possible. We'll see. But anywho, I think that's going to wrap it up for me. I actually have to get out of here and go to work tonight, which kind of sucks, but it's a beautiful night here, and Southern California. It's about 80 degrees outside, and I'm going to head down to the beach. So I'm going to get out of here and do that. Don't forget, if you want to kind of hang out and join me tomorrow, I thought about doing a live stream or a watch along, but I'm not going to bother with that. I will be chilling here all day tomorrow watching the Super Bowl. No Super Bowl parties this year. Very sad. I'm usually always at one with my friends, but of course, nobody's really doing that this year. So I'm going to be here just in my house watching the Super Bowl. So if you are not following me on Twitter at Good Mic Work, please do so. I'll be tweeting out random stuff throughout the show, and hopefully the creative team in the NFL writes a really good story tomorrow night. And hopefully it's triple overtime that comes down to the wire with a sudden death and a run in and all sorts of stuff. Maybe Peyton Manning runs in and hits Tom Brady with a chair, and they put the Kansas City Chiefs over. Who knows? Maybe there's a heel turn. That would be cool. Maybe a Money in the Bank cash in. Maybe Bill Belichick shows up and cuts the power to the arena to stop Brady from winning the championship. I don't know. Hopefully it'll be fun for those of you who care about football. Yes, Zane, I did check out the Yoko doc. We talked about that earlier on, beginning part of the podcast, probably about 30 minutes in. Just rewind a little bit. You'll be able to hear all of my thoughts on the Yokozuna documentary. Leave me all your thoughts and questions and ideas and responses to everything we talked about here today in the comments below if you're watching this on demand. And the next time you will hear from me will be Monday night, immediately following Raw. We'll be up here for a full show review. And last time I checked on the network earlier today, on the website earlier today, nothing has been announced in terms of a preview for Raw yet. So literally no idea what we can expect. There's no advertisement for Edge, but I think we'll probably see him. And I'm sure we'll see some fallout from the Sheamus and Drew McIntyre incident. That might even lead to a match, or maybe that's going to set up an Elimination Chamber or Fastlane match. That would be my bet. Maybe some more stuff with Charlotte and Asuka. Alexa Bliss will probably be drooling some blood in there somewhere. I don't know. And we still don't know when The Fiend is going to return. And I think maybe Elimination Chamber could be a good spot for that. I talked about a scenario involving The Fiend last Monday, assuming that Edge goes to SmackDown and challenges Roman Reigns. Let's say that you've got an Elimination Chamber match to determine Drew's challenger. One of the people in the Elimination Chamber match is Randy Orton. Let's say it comes down to the end. Randy Orton and somebody else. Up through the ring comes the new look Fiend. Shows up, or maybe the lights go out and he shows up and he's got some sort of a new outfit or new look or new gimmick going on. He attacks Randy Orton, puts him in the mandible claw, allowing whoever is in the ring with Randy Orton to pin him and win the match, earning themselves a title match at WrestleMania. And I think that would really be fun because February is a popular month for people to come through the rings at pay-per-views. Undertaker did it in 1996 in the Diesel and Bret Hart cage match. And then in another cage match, just a few years later in 1999, The Big Show came up through the ring in his debut, also in a cage match. This would be a chamber match, and would be very fitting if The Fiend came up through the ring and did the exact same thing. And I threw out a crazy idea for a winner on Monday that everybody rejected. So let me hit you with it one more time now and just see how you feel about it and think about it before you say no. I know you're going to say no, but let's just say the last two people in the ring, or the last three people in the ring or something, are Randy Orton, Kofi Kingston, and Ali. Now remember how Kofi won the chamber, got the match against Daniel Bryan because Ali was knocked out due to Randy Orton. Now you got all three of them in there. The Fiend comes up, mandible claws Randy Orton, allows Ali to pin Randy Orton, setting up The Fiend and Randy Orton at WrestleMania, leaving Ali and Kofi in there now to fight alone, just the two of them. Winner goes to WrestleMania and Ali beats him and is now the challenger for Drew McIntyre. Well, that would suck. Would it? Would it? Would that really suck? What does every single fan say? Why does WWE constantly rely on stars of yesterday? Why does WWE constantly rely on part-timers and legends? So then what the fuck are you complaining about if Ali, a guy who arguably already lost this opportunity a couple years ago, gets to come full circle, get it back, and face Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania? What, you don't think the match would be good? I do. I think the match would be awesome. Drew McIntyre versus Ali? Hell yeah. McIntyre probably would claim more of him and beat him, but Ali's got a whole lot of backup with Retribution. I don't think I'd want to see Ali win the WWE title and have him champion with Retribution. Just so crazy to me. That would just blow my mind if it happened, but I really wouldn't hate the match. I wouldn't hate the match. Hell, maybe I'd even be open to Ali winning the title. I mean, at least he'd accomplish what he set out to do, and he'd have a whole lot of backup, and you can make it a stipulation match, and they can cheat their balls off, and he can actually beat Drew McIntyre for the title, and Ali can win the title at WrestleMania, and Roman Reigns will retain his. So Drew drops his to Ali, Roman retains his. And of course, Ali has got all sorts of help from Retribution. Maybe it's even a good time to debut a new member of Retribution, like Keith Lee, who shows up and joins his girlfriend Reckoning in Retribution and helps Ali win the title. I really don't see the downside to that, especially from the fans, the very same fans that say don't rely on part-timers are going to be against this idea. Why? Well, which is it? Which one do you want? Can't have it both ways. So I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I think the fans on the surface will initially reject that, but if you really think about it, it doesn't make any logical sense to reject it. It makes logical sense to embrace it, because what a way to get somebody over, make a new guy, Ali. He's the only part of Retribution we really like. Everything else sucks. Stupid names, stupid masks, stupid ring names, dumb music. Everything's dumb. But Ali's good, and he's got a story that he's going after Kofi right now to get revenge on what happened to him. He feels like he's wronged. Everybody in Retribution feels like they're wronged. Eventually, they should get a little bit of a payday here. So just an idea, but there would be story there. That scenario that I laid out that everybody in the chat is rejecting right now, you know what that's called? It's called long-term booking, something that all of you claim you want. So here you have it, and you're saying no. I think it's a good idea. WWE will lose money as Ali as champion? No, they will not lose money whatsoever. Did you hear earlier on in the podcast when we talked about WWE's quarter 4 financial call in 2020 financial call? Record revenue, record yearly revenue, $974.2 million. And that was in a COVID era. That was with a pandemic, no audience. I certainly don't think Ali is going to do anything. Nothing creative is going to look how bad it is. Look at how bad creative is. They're not making less money. They're making more. So it does not matter who the champion is. It doesn't matter. You can make Pete Rosenberg the fucking WWE champion. They are still going to pull in record revenue every single year. The money's coming from Fox and NBC and Peacock in Saudi Arabia. Ali ain't going to make them lose a dime at all. So I think it would work. And I'm on board with it. I should take that one to Twitter, see what the Twitter crowd thinks. But anyway, that's going to be it for me. We'll talk more about that scenario on Monday night. Maybe we'll get some more evidence to that, because I think a lot of that would be okay and would be a lot more fun than people think it would be at WrestleMania, because we also want a good in-ring match, don't we? Don't we want that? So I'd be fine either way. Just a really good, solid title match with Drew claymoring Ali and winning, or a swerve where Keith Lee or somebody else turns heel, joins Retribution, and Ali is your new fucking WWE champion in a huge upset at WrestleMania. I still don't see what's really wrong with that. I think it's a fabulous idea. I think I'm smart. Anyway, I got to get out of here, head to work now. You guys have a great rest of your night and weekend. Join me tomorrow over on the Twitters. We'll talk about the Super Bowl, and then we'll be back up here on Monday night, immediately following Raw, for a big-ass full show review. You guys have a good rest of your night, and I'll catch you Monday night. Peace.